Chapter 676 Edda. In the face of the survival of civilization, personal life and death are insignificant.
Dear leaders, I think Master Gerda has just explained the energy technology very clearly. I will only make some simple additions here.
Ida walked up to the stage, not in a hurry to get down to business, but explained in detail how they used magic to transform a carbon-based life form into an energy creature. The most critical of these is the transfer of consciousness. Previously, the geometric civilization spent a lot of time and energy on researching energy technology, but it has never been successful because it hit a wall in this area. Some cutting-edge scientific researchers have developed a method to upload memories to the optical brain. In theory, they only need to build an energy body and transmit the data into it. But the problem is that one of these modified carbon-based organisms, everyone's minds change drastically. After all, a creature's habits, emotions, and desires all come from the control of genes. Once the body disappears, all desires will be reduced, and it will become closer to an absolutely rational state. This is obviously not the result they want. In addition, it remains to be determined whether uploaded memories can be regarded as alive. These memories can also be modified. In addition, a certain experiment caused heavy casualties, and this technology was shelved. The emergence of magic has solved this problem. It can coerce consciousness and transform it into what the Magic Empire calls a soul, allowing it to be separated from the body. Magic power can also mimic matter and restore the original body shape, which can only be described as perfect. Hearing this, all the Yuanpan leaders present nodded. From this point of view, the energy transformation can be said to be all benefits. Even the Yuanpan leaders, who had just strongly opposed it, began to hesitate, seeing that everyone was paying attention and listening to his speech. Ida knew that the time had come and suddenly spoke.
In addition to the breakthrough in energy technology, I also made a major discovery. I think everyone should still remember that when magic power is converted into matter, part of its quality will be lost.
Right? Ida asked.
Have you solved this problem?
A Yuanpan leader said in surprise. The fact that magic power will be lost when used has always troubled researchers. Although this loss is only about 30%. A part of energy will be lost every time it is converted. Some researchers have calculated that their utilization rate of magic power is even less than half.
Unfortunately, not yet.
Ida shook his head, and then spoke again, without waiting for the other party to ask.
But we have discovered where the magic goes.
As he spoke, Ada called up the projection screen of the optical brain and projected the results of the experiment in front of everyone. Gerda had already vaguely realized that something was wrong, and a happy look solidified on her face. However, Gerda's attack was too sudden, and before he could stop it, the electromagnetic waves spread throughout the whole process again.
According to our experiments, all the lost magic power finally merged into the same place, which is the star field where the Magic Empire is located.
As soon as this statement came out, all the leaders present were in an uproar. No one is a fool, and they naturally know what it means when the lost magic power is gathered into the Magic Empire.
Are you sure that the results of this experiment are accurate?
A Yuanpan leader asked in disbelief.
I dare to guarantee with my life that in the 70 experiments before and after, the results obtained are accurate,
Ida said categorically, then looked at the Yuanpan leaders present and said impassionedly,
Our energy transformation technology is developed based on magic power. This change is very thorough, from body to soul. I apply for a memory test on all geometry people who have undergone energy transformation to ensure that they will not be affected by the energy transformation.
Ida's words were extremely sharp and bold, because there were hundreds of leaders present who had undergone transformation, and these people were obviously within the scope of the memory review. Ida undoubtedly gambled everything on himself. If this matter was an own mistake, then he would inevitably face the wrath of hundreds of Yuanpan leaders. But in the face of the survival of civilization, individual life and death seem insignificant.
Absurd!
Gerda was the first to stand up, feeling both frightened and angry. The other leaders, who had undergone energy transformation, were also furious. Memory review is usually only used on criminals who commit heinous crimes and attempt to resist. Ida's words simply treat them as criminals. Moreover, the whereabouts of the lost magic power is just Ada's personal guess, and the results of the experiment also need further confirmation. It is also intolerable to censor the memory of the supreme ruler of geometric civilization. This precedent cannot be set under any circumstances. Some Yuanpan leaders even suggested asking the Magic Empire directly. The strength gap between the two sides was really too big. It was important to find out the whole story to avoid misunderstandings. However, there are also many leaders who support Eda's remarks.
since magic is likely to be controlled by the Magic Empire. Censorship is necessary. Under the gaze of countless scrutinizing eyes, one can imagine the pressure Ada faced. Just as he was preparing to continue to present more evidence to persuade everyone, the warning bell was activated again, and a strong electromagnetic wave instantly covered the entire debate. Initiate Level 1 alert immediately. It was the Supreme Leader who spoke. The moment Ada spoke, he realized the seriousness of the matter. If the results of the experiment were accurate, then the geometric civilization had reached the edge of life and death. Only in the presence of all the geometric civilization high-level officials in this conference could a thorough investigation be carried out. Only through censorship can the loss of civilization be minimized. As the alert order was issued, layers of energy shields rose up in the conference room, protecting all the disk leaders who came to attend the meeting. Goethe saw the Supreme Leader's determination and immediately panicked, shouting hysterically that this meeting was simply a trap, and that the other party was looking for reasons to deprive them of their rights. However, less than 10% of the Yuanpan leaders have been energized, and it is impossible to mobilize enough colleagues to oppose it. On the contrary, after calming down, more and more senior officials realized the seriousness of the problem. The weapons deployed in the conference room were activated one after another, and the guards immediately moved out to surround the disk leaders who had undergone energy transformation. Goethe is naturally unwilling to accept the so-called memory review, but this is the most tightly protected place in the entire geometric civilization. Even with pseudo-legendary strength, there is no possibility of victory. Resistance is completely futile. However, to the Supreme Leader's expectation, the surrounded disk leaders did not show the slightest panic, and even the electromagnetic waves flickering around them gradually became calm. Because they understand? God. It's coming. Chapter 677 Lenin, make a choice. Surrender or welcome the destruction of civilization. Just as the guards in the conference hall were preparing to take action, an unspeakable fear suddenly rose in the hearts of all geometry stars. It was like a deer walking through the forest was stared at by a ferocious tiger. Every cell in the body seemed to be trembling. A large amount of magic power gathered in the center of the conference hall amid screams of panic, and gradually condensed into shape. Soon, a figure that seemed extremely familiar to them appeared in front of everyone. The Supreme Leader recognized at a glance that it was Lin, the interstellar governor of the Magic Empire. Good afternoon, everyone. Lin In came, dressed in a golden red robe, and greeted him with a calm expression. He didn't show any panic at being caught. Instead, he seemed to be having a friendly exchange meeting. On the other side, it was the complete opposite. The moment he saw Lin In, the Supreme Leader activated all the protections. The isolation net, cluster rays, and micro-antimatter cannons all pointed at the center of the conference hall, firmly restricting the other party. There. Please don't make any fearless resistance, Your Excellency, Governor of the Magic Empire. Otherwise, I will arrest you for invasion. Fearing the power that the Magic Empire had shown, the Supreme Leader remained silent even though he was extremely angry. However, the other Yuanpan leaders were not so restrained, and all kinds of criticism and abuse resounded in the conference hall. They don't know how the other party invaded this high-dimensional space. But one thing can be confirmed. What Ada said is true. The Magic Empire's choice to trade magic power is a complete conspiracy. Amidst the scolding and abuse, Lenin did not make any move, as if he had followed the advice and had completely given up resistance. The Supreme Leader relaxed slightly and asked again, Tell me, what exactly does the Magic Empire want to do? Of course, it is for the peace and development of geometric civilization, Lin explained with a smile. Tricking the bargaining chips of the agreed deal? Is this the so-called peace? The Supreme Leader scolded sternly. You are provoking a war. A Yuanpan leader stared at Lin fiercely and said hysterically. Some people even proposed to arrest Lin In immediately and test Lin In's memory to decide whether to hold a trial. If you want to gain something, you have to pay some price, Lin In said noncommittally. I think you have realized the convenience of magic, haven't you? Reciprocal peace is based on deterrence. Lin In knows this very well. Although the two sides have always been in peace with each other before, he has also seen all the little tricks that geometry civilization has done behind the scenes. There have been several temptations on the surface, and both sides are just using secret methods for the survival of their respective civilizations. Make a decision now. Now that he had been seen through, Lin took off his disguise and said coldly, Should I surrender, welcome the rebirth of civilization, and become a vassal of the Magic Empire? Or should I choose to welcome the destruction of civilization? Lenin's arrogant words immediately aroused the crowd's excitement.
It was obvious that the Magic Empire had violated the Covenant first. And now it was issuing threats without shame. And a single person wants the entire geometric civilization to surrender. This can only be described as arrogant.
Kill him!
An angry Yuan Pan leader shouted loudly. The Supreme Leader was also completely angered and immediately issued an attack command to the optical brain. Linen's words had violated his bottom line. The geometric civilization could compromise, but it could not become a puppet of the high-dimensional civilization. However, after the order to attack was issued, the weapons devices in the conference hall were not activated. Lin clapped his hands, and the isolation net covering the surrounding area flickered and disappeared without a trace, and then slowly walked towards the location of the Supreme Leader. The guards who realized something was wrong took out their portable cluster ray guns, but after pressing the launch button, the weapons in their hands suddenly exploded. Waves of violent explosions resounded in the conference room, and all the guards died instantly. The Yuan Pan leaders, who had been clamoring to capture and eliminate Lin, were suddenly silent. Some even wanted to flee the venue in fear. But the space here was also chaotic. No matter where they started, they would eventually return to the starting point. The most frightened person is the Supreme Leader of the geometric civilization. He has clearly issued a first-level alert order, but until now, he has not received any support. Lin En was still getting closer step by step. His steps were unhurried and unhurried, as if he was stepping on the hearts of everyone in the conference hall.
That's enough. Stop!
The Supreme Leader raised the scepter in his hand and threatened in a stern voice.
A trigger core has been placed in the space we are in now. Once I activate this scepter, the micro black hole inside will destroy everything in an instant.
The power of black holes is self-evident. In the last war with the Magic Empire, they used artificial black hole technology to destroy the Magic Empire's high-dimensional biological weapons. This is currently the only bargaining chip they have. But what the Supreme Leader did not expect was that Lin shrugged and said nonchalantly,
"You can press it at will. Don't worry. All the laws of the universe here are decided by me. For example, the direction of the electromagnetic force here is reversed. The contact between matter and antimatter cannot be directly annihilated. And the range of the strong nuclear force is also greatly shortened."
Lin En said one by one. As if he remembered something, he spoke again.
"Oh, by the way, quantum entanglement here requires a specific medium, and their spins are also opposite."
The moment the words fell, the conference hall immediately darkened like daylight, and all protective devices lost their effect because of the change in quantum laws. The core of the optical brain exploded. Also ineffective is the scepter held high in the hands of the Supreme Leader, the only bargaining chip in the negotiation of geometric civilization.
"This is impossible! This is impossible!"
Chief Researcher Etta stared at Lin with disbelief. How could the laws of the universe change just because of the other person's words? However, some of Lin's words are easy to verify, such as the direction of electromagnetic force. Ida yanked a communication instrument on the table, roughly dismantled it, made a motor on site, and immediately started testing it.
"The direction of electromagnetic force is reversed. Really reversed."
The moment the result came out, Ada went crazy, and hundreds of years of faith and persistence suddenly collapsed. The researchers who also came to the meeting also tried it themselves, but they couldn't accept the results at all and shouted hysterically,
"Physics no longer exists. Physics no longer exists."
Chapter 678 Mathematical Olympiad Laws. Under the powerful threat of Lin in changing the laws of physics, it was not just the scientific researchers of the geometric civilization that collapsed. The leaders of the Yuan Pan present also showed despair. They have always known that the gap between the two civilizations is huge, but they did not expect that the gap would be so big. All weapons of geometric civilization are based on the application of the laws of the universe. If the laws change, it means that the technological weapons have completely lost their effect, and the cornerstone of civilization has collapsed.
"Choose surrender or destruction."
Lin En spoke again, the loud voice resounding in the minds of every geometry star. Endless humiliation surrounded the Supreme Leader's mind. The voice of resistance reached his lips, but was swallowed hard. The scepter tightly held in his hand was finally loosened. This is the ultimate civilization that has the ability to modify the laws of the universe. Just a single interstellar governor can collapse all their resistance. As Lin En said, there are only two choices before them: surrender or destruction. While the leaders were hesitating, Gerda stood up at the right time and spoke respectfully.
"Great Imperial Governor, please calm down your anger. These ignorant, shameful civilizations cannot see the situation clearly and dare to question your tolerance and mercy."
After calming down the anger in Lin En's heart, Gerda turned her head and looked at the people in the conference hall.
and spoke solemnly. Everyone, you should all have seen the magic of this special energy. Magic. It is the key to unlocking higher dimensions and an indispensable treasure to achieve the advancement of civilization levels. With the technological level of the Magic Empire, we could have easily destroyed the geometric civilization. But they kindly forgave us for the war provocation and generously handed over the magic power to a lower civilization to help us complete the jump in civilization level. But now some people suspect that this is with evil intentions, Gerda said mercilessly, as she looked indifferently at the researchers whose beliefs had collapsed. This is the most ridiculous accusation I have ever heard in my life. Look at the evidence you have produced. Is it just because the magic power will enter the quantum sea when it is transformed, and the direction happens to be the star field to which the Magic Empire belongs? What else? Several researchers opened their mouths to refute. But they also understood that relying on this piece of evidence alone was not enough to prove that the Magic Empire was making small moves behind the scenes. After all, there are too many possibilities. No one knows what magic is like. Maybe this special energy has convergent characteristics and will spontaneously move closer to the source of energy. Therefore, when the form is unstable, part of the energy will leave and return to the Magic Empire. If I had to say it, it was most doubtful that Lin Eng could appear in a tightly protected conference hall by such a coincidence. However, with the level of technology of the Magic Empire, it is possible that other means are being used to monitor them. Considering the huge gap, the protection they set up is as if it does not exist. After successfully suppressing all the objections, Gerda once again expressed that there was no thought control in the energy transformation process. She learned about the Magic Empire after meeting the Imperial Governor in the Magic Network. Great. That's why we are determined to bring the entire civilization into a broader high-dimensional world. Gerda's words were not that convincing. But all the disk leaders present had to admit that they could be crushed with a snap of their fingers. There was no need to rely on memory modification. After being silent for a while, the Supreme Leader finally relaxed along the steps given by Gerda and allowed all the senior officials present to vote to jointly decide the fate of civilization. Survival or destruction is an easy choice to make, especially when the power gap is too outrageous. The use of magic power is related to the advancement of civilization, and the price is just to become a vassal of a higher civilization. The humiliation is a bit humiliating, but it also has an extra backer. This does not seem to be unacceptable. Under such considerations, the final voting result was 1,037 votes in favor and 80 abstentions, passing the resolution. From now on, the geometric civilization will unconditionally accept the dominance of the Magic Empire. Lin was naturally very satisfied with this result. Gerda's words saved him a lot of effort. At least the situation did not develop in the worst direction. Lin stretched out his hand and snapped his fingers, and the conference hall that had been a mess in the previous explosion was restored as quickly as time went back. Even the dead guards were resurrected on the spot. When he modified the rules to cause them to self-destruct on the spot, Lin Eng collected the souls of these people, and now he used magic power to create a body for them. Such a gesture of goodwill instantly eased the tense atmosphere on the field. It was only then that Lin Eng spoke about the first task assigned to the geometric civilization. I will give you 6 months to prepare for war. At that time, there may be a small trouble. You need to solve it to show your sincerity. Your Majesty the Governor, I wonder what the trouble is, a Yuanban leader asked cautiously. The rest of the geometry stars were also a little uneasy, because this small trouble might only be a small problem for the Magic Empire, but it might be a big problem for them. You'll know then. Lin Eng kept it secret without any explanation. After he finished speaking, he disappeared as abruptly as when he appeared. This was not because Lin Eng was deliberately engaging in mysticism, but in just 10 minutes, all the power he had delivered had been completely consumed. The amount of divine power consumed to change the laws of the universe is too terrifying. Even if the scope is only as large as a conference hall, it has drained most of Lin's power. If it weren't for the purpose of intimidating the high-level officials of these geometric civilizations, Lin would not have rashly used this power, that he was not yet familiar with the laws of the mathematical Olympiad. This opportunity is really too rare. In fact, it was carefully planned by him. Only by convincing the top brass of the geometric civilization in one breath can he solve the threats facing their universe at the minimum cost and accumulate enough strength to deal with the threats coming from them. War in the overworld. Even taking the initiative to launch a counterattack. When he opened his eyes again, Lin had appeared in the eternal star 300 light-years away. In total, it has been more than a month since they returned to the universe from the quantum sea. After 67 years of preparation, the power of the council has far exceeded before. As long as the 9 ring legendary wizards in the council
who are preparing to be promoted complete the promotion ceremony. The war will begin. The timing. Chapter 679 Black Hole Collapse. A few months passed in a blink of an eye. While the geometric civilization was secured for them to prepare for war, the Magic Kingdom also entered the final stage of war preparations. For Lin to single-handedly conquer a galaxy-level civilization hundreds of millions of times larger than theirs. The members of the House of Representatives were filled with shame. You must know that the geometric civilization has always been regarded as the biggest threat by the Parliament. But now it has directly become a vassal of the kingdom, and will be the vanguard of the attack on the main world. If facing the gods of the main world alone with the strength of the Parliament, the chance of winning is very slim. Then the chance of winning has now increased to more than 80%. Herav and others finally understood where Lin had the confidence to counterattack the main world. Only this magic star dared to do such a crazy, but exciting thing. Thanks to Lin once again getting 5,000 tons of Element 7 from the geometric civilization. All the 9 ring wizards entered the high-dimensional space in the third galaxy, and performed the ascension ceremony at the same time. In addition, a dozen high-temporal velocity areas were also established in this system as arsenals. And a crazy explosion of troops and armaments began. The number of warships we can dispatch now is about 500. The main weapons are Star Destroyer Cannon, Antimatter Energy Beam, Scattered Neutron Cannon, and Dimensional Web. In the battle conference room of Eternal Star, Dennis, who is responsible for the manufacturing and research and development of battleships, kept talking about the various data of the 12th generation Galaxy-class battleships. After dismantling dozens of warships, and after 67 years of research on the geometric civilization starship data, they have basically conquered various technologies, combined with the power of magic. The 12th generation of Galaxy-class battleships are no longer as good as those currently in service with the geometric civilization. The main battleship is about to be worse. According to their tests, a capital ship is basically equivalent to a god with weak divine power. The destructive power of the naval gun is comparable to powerful divine magic. The speed is also extremely fast. It can reach 1.7 without the help of divine power. A cruising speed of twice the speed of light. The only drawback is that it is not flexible enough. Their opponents this time, the gods of the main world, although they are tens or hundreds of meters tall and can individually break through 1 kilometer. In this vast universe, they are as small as a piece of gravel, and they move quickly and easily. Very dexterous. You may need to use a large-scale offensive or use a tracking weapon to hit it. On the other hand, the huge Galaxy-class battleship is like a living target. Once it is approached, it can easily fall into an extremely dangerous situation. Their solution is to learn from the main ship of the geometric civilization and use a large number of small and fast sentry machines to assist. These tiny machines have gravity bombs placed in them, which can destroy the opponent with a suicide offensive. In addition, they have also broken through the dimension jumping technology, which is enough to change the embarrassing situation of being beaten if they catch up. Lenin nodded and then continued. What about miniature black hole weapons? This thing is too difficult to make. Currently, only a few main ships can carry it, Dennis said helplessly. Although they successfully deciphered the geometric civilization's artificial black hole technology, the energy required to create this thing was enough to drain an entire galaxy. Even with the help of Herav, the god of force fields, they only produced 2 in total. 10 black hole cores were carried on the most advanced main ships. Too few. Lenin shook his head. Artificial black holes are the most powerful weapon they can mass produce at present, and they are also the biggest capital against the main world. In terms of low-end and terminal combat power, the coalition of the Parliament and the geometric civilization may have an advantage. But the 3 main gods of the main world are not easy to deal with, and only weapons of the level of micro black holes can make the opponent a little afraid. Let's do this. I will be responsible for manufacturing the black hole core. All you need to do is make the corresponding launchers for other warships, Lenin said in a deep voice. That's no problem, Dennis agreed readily. He seemed to have seen the scene of hundreds of fleets launching miniature black holes to wash the ground. Speaker Lin, should we prepare for a little more time? Is it too hasty to launch a counterattack on the main world now? Alok, who has been promoted to legend, said worriedly. Although they now have the help of geometric civilization, all preparations are still hasty, and there is no time to convert all the 67 years of accumulation into combat power. And considering the speed difference between the 2 sides, delaying time should be the most beneficial move for them. No, I'm afraid we don't have much time. Lenin shook his head. If before he was promoted to the main god, he still had a glimmer of hope that the black hole outside the system could block the gods of the main world. Then now he has completely no more hope. If the boundary wall between the two universes hadn't come into play, greatly weakening the power that the three main gods could exert, the black hole would have been dealt with long ago. Even so, the opponent is not helpless. The event horizon range of OG, the god of life and creation, that can pass through black holes, is the best proof. As Lennon was explaining, a strong feeling appeared in his heart, and he subconsciously looked at the sky in the distance.
What's wrong? Speaker Len?
Dennis asked in confusion. But then he also paused. It was news coming from the Magic Network. The person responsible for monitoring the black hole sent a report. The event horizon of the target black hole was rapidly expanding, and it had doubled several times in just a few minutes.
It seems that they are not prepared to give us more time,
Lennon said with a solemn expression. Such a big move must mean that the other party is fully confident.
Inform us immediately, and let all the main fleets set sail immediately. In addition, be ready to activate the wormholes in the two worlds at any time.
Lennon gave a few instructions very quickly, then tore apart time and space and rushed to the matter immediately. Birthplace. Since the coordinates were set up in advance, it only took less than a second to reach a position about 1 light-year away from the eternal star. Just as what was said in the news report, the black domain formed by the huge gravitational distortion of time and space is rapidly expanding. More than a dozen detection ships that were unable to respond were directly involved, and all the monitoring facilities set up nearby were destroyed. The remaining personnel had already evacuated tens of billions of kilometers away. It was not until Len arrived that the legendary wizards responsible for monitoring the black hole breathed a sigh of relief. However, before they could report the situation, Len interrupted them.
Keep retreating.
Len could sense that this black hole was about to explode. Chapter 680, Black Hole Jet. A wonder of the universe. What is a black hole? It is the embodiment of the extreme mass that distorts space and time. It can suck in all the matter and energy within the event horizon and compress it into an extremely small singularity. Once caught in it, even a star as big as a star cannot escape. But Lin knew very well that the black hole was not invincible. Although its power was powerful, it was a dead thing after all. It was not difficult for the Lord God to break through the blockade. However, the gods of the main world obviously wanted to do more than that. After experiencing violent expansion, the black hole's event horizon suddenly began to collapse inward. Dozens of warships that were preparing to evacuate thought that the crisis had passed and stopped one after another.
Keep retreating.
Lin sent the message without hesitation. But it was still a step too late. The explosion of the black hole had already begun. The light suddenly appeared in the black hole that was supposed to be empty and filled with deathly silence. A piece of red material that looked like a burning cloud rotated inside the black hole, turning the entire black domain into a flat red disk. Immediately afterwards, a beam of light with a diameter of more than 100,000 kilometers erupted from the core of the black hole and flew towards Lennon's direction. It was a light even brighter than a supernova explosion, mixed with hundreds of colors, and millions of times brighter than a star. This is one of the wonders of the universe. The black hole jet. Even Lin, who witnessed this scene, was secretly frightened. If he was hit by such a high density and huge energy beam, even a god would fall on the spot. But now, he doesn't dare to dodge at all, because the dozens of warships behind him have just stopped, and now it takes several seconds to accelerate to reach the upper limit of speed. So we can only choose to resist. Lin stretched out his hand and tapped it lightly in the void of the universe. It seemed that nothing happened to the creatures in the three-dimensional world, but the entire space changed in a higher dimension. The space-time curve that is difficult for low-dimensional creatures to understand began to twist, forming a strange structure that was sparse on the inside and dense on the outside. The next moment, the colorful black hole jet has arrived. The energy column transformed from billions of tons of black hole matter began to twist and deform when it passed the area about 10,000 kilometers in front of Lin. Nearly 90% of the energy was directed to both sides, forming an inverted pointed cone-shaped energy beam. This remaining layer of energy was resisted by Lin's weakening of the magnetic field, reverse energy flow, and neutron shield. Among the dozens of battleships that were also located within the coverage area of the black hole's jet, Tick and others who were performing surveillance missions felt that they were walking between life and death, and cold sweat broke out behind their backs. The exploration spacecraft they were on was not the latest galactic warship, and it did not have the technology to jump across dimensions. Even if there were, Tick doubted that they could escape, because under such a powerful energy impact, the time and space around them had become chaotic, and even if they entered high-dimensional space,
they would probably be affected. Captain Tick, this is the message from Speaker Lin, telling us to break out from the 3 o'clock direction in 5 seconds. A crew member said eagerly. Tick immediately put away his complicated thoughts and hurriedly spoke. Everyone, get ready. The reactor is running at maximum power. Rush out for me regardless of consumption. The moment the words fell, an extremely eye-catching gap with a diameter of about 10 kilometers appeared in the gushing energy column. The terrifying energy wave was like water hitting the baffle, and was forcibly separated. The dozens of spacecraft trapped inside immediately flew towards the gap at the fastest speed. The moment they tried this unstable passage, everyone's hearts were in their throats. There was a strange scene outside the spacecraft, as if someone had knocked over the paint bucket, and green, white, yellow, and purple were all mixed together. As crew members of carbon-based organisms, the spectrum they can see with their eyes is very limited, and they can only feel a deep fear. However, in the eyes of Tick, who has been promoted to a legend, this scene is even more terrifying. Just like him as predicted before, the terrifying energy flow runs through the 4 dimensions. And it is precisely because of this that it can break through the blockade of gravity. Fortunately, nothing went wrong along the way. Tick and others who successfully left the black hole's jet coverage breathed a sigh of relief and did not dare to stay nearby. Instead, they flew as far away as possible. Everyone understood that they would not be of any help except interfering with Lin's actions. Lin on the other side, after sensing the evacuation of Tick and others, also left the area covered by the black hole jet simultaneously. Although he can eliminate the black hole jet with all his strength, it will definitely consume a lot of divine power reserves. Lin knows very well that the explosion of this thing is just the beginning, and what they need to face next is the real thing. Challenge. Lin had already sensed a strong threat coming, but the other party was using the black hole's riots as a cover, making it impossible to determine its location. The strong jet lasted for several hours, and then began to slowly weaken. Lin was even more certain that this was by no means a naturally occurring spectacle. Otherwise, such a phenomenon would have lasted for weeks or even years, and would not have occurred in the extreme like this. In a short period of time, all the matter and energy that have been released from the black hole will be ejected. This is obviously a major god who deliberately caused this cosmic wonder, just as he used the gravity of the black hole to impact with water droplets. The other party also used the power of the black hole itself to attack this time. One after another spacetime cracks have been impacted by high-density energy in this area and have become unstable on the boundary wall. Lin has already expanded his field and repaired the nearby cracks as much as possible. However, there is a spacetime rift that he cannot repair, and that is the spacetime door that already exists within the coverage of the black hole. Fortunately, there is good news. After a short delay, the geometric civilization fleet has arrived. Lin immediately released a trace of power and descended into one of the main ships. The person who led the troops to support this time was the manager Mooney, who had met several times before, since he had been in contact with people from the Magic Empire for the longest time. He was sent here. Mr. Governor, we just received a communication from the Magic Empire, and we immediately transmitted it through nearby coordinates, Manager Minnie said with great anxiety. Naturally, they could clearly see the strong black hole jet just now. Chu couldn't help but ponder the interstellar governor's purpose in calling them here. Could it be that we are trying to find a way to solve this unstable black hole? That might be a little difficult. The size of this thing is too big. It has swallowed up an unknown amount of energy over the years. The scope of its event horizon has been equivalent to an entire galaxy. It is definitely a big trouble. No, my coming to you has nothing to do with this black hole. Lennon sensed what Mo&I was thinking, shook his head and objected. Manager Mo&I was relieved. But then he heard Lin continue. Actually, it's not a big deal. It's just about solving a long-planned rebellion. Rebellion? Manager Minnie's body immediately burst out with a dazzling red light, almost catching up with the light emitted by the stars. And there was only one thought left in his mind. Otherwise, we should find a way to deal with this black hole. Chapter 681. Gods are just high-level cannon fodder. After Lin revealed the purpose of this mission, many crew members in the fleet even had the urge to turn around and run away. They knew how powerful the Magic Empire was. After the high-level meeting half a year ago, a group of Yuanpan leaders announced the news that the Geometry civilization had become a vassal, which shocked every Geometry star. Since more than 1,000 years ago, they discovered element number 7 and achieved a technological explosion. The Geometric civilization has become one of the most powerful civilizations in the entire galaxy, based on their pride in the development of their own civilization. After this news was sent out, The vast majority of geometry people simply could not accept this fact. However, the voices of opposition fell silent after the Yuanpan leaders released the video footage of what happened in the conference hall. Only then did the geometric stars understand why thousands of leaders were able to unite the entire civilization without the slightest disagreement. The future is delivered. The opponent is really too powerful. They had never heard of a weapon that could change the laws of the universe. And they could not imagine how powerful it was. So last time, Lin En mentioned that there was a small test that had to be dealt with by the geometry civilization, which required them to prepare for war. The senior leaders of the geometry civilization thought it was to teach a certain galaxy civilization that had the bad luck to anger the Magic Empire. Unexpectedly, they actually had to fight with the Magic Empire, relevant to the internal affairs of the Empire. Is this a battle they can get involved in? Lin En naturally saw the anxiety of Moni and others, and immediately spoke of comfort. Don't worry. All you need to deal with is just a part of the high-dimensional weapons to enter this star field. We will naturally solve the real battle. Manager Moni was not at ease at all. Just as he was about to ask for details about his opponent, Guangnao had already conveyed the warning message. But it was the descending gods who took the lead in launching the attack. Compared to the timid geometric civilization fleet, the gods of the main world could only be described as having no scruples. Especially when Lin En set up a plan to blow up the Pantheon in front of his face. It made some gods, who were eager to invade the universe and gain promotion opportunities, extremely frustrated. Therefore, after arriving, seeing this kind of incomparable familiarity, located in the circular battleship outside the Black Hole's Event Horizon launched a direct attack. It is the god of destruction who takes action. Hundreds of thousands of lights of destruction envelop the airspace, with a diameter of tens of thousands of kilometers. Execute order number 12. Manager Moni immediately asked the optical brain to issue the order. Thousands of warships located in the target airspace made dimension jumps the moment they received the message. By the time the energy ray passed by, they had completely disappeared. When it reappeared, 1,200 warships were already arranged in a semicircle. Among them, the 200 warships at the front opened their front-end protection, and the ship's hull glowed with bursts of blue light, and the space in front was like ripples. Generally oscillates continuously. This is the dimension trap. Afterwards, 1,000 rounds of Star Destroyer cannons were blasted out together, flying towards the direction of the space-time gate. The distance between the two sides is tens of millions of kilometers. Even if the attack arrives at the speed of light, there is still plenty of time for the gods to react. However, the legends who rush into the universe as the vanguard are out of luck. Those who were more lucky were taken away by the nearby gods, while those who were less lucky could only stay there and wait to die, or even fled into the coverage of the black hole in a panic. Every legend is a high-ranking figure in every dimension. But in such a cosmic war, they are just the lowest cannon fodder. Even if they are hit by the energy aftermath, they will die on the spot. My name is Alt, the Sun God, the ruler of light, the god of holiness and glory. The arrogant declaration resounded in the minds of everyone in this star field. Like Harry, the god of thunder and war, the sun god Alt is also a god with great divine power. Facing the attack from the starship, Alt had no intention of dodging. Incomparably strong sunlight bloomed all over his body, and the several beams of Star Destroyer cannons that came directly in front of him quickly melted away several kilometers away. With a great god like Alt as a sharp knife, and dozens of powerful divine beings taking action at the same time, the descending gods quickly broke through the protective circle laid out by the dimensional traps and sentinel machines, and entered into extremely brutal close combat. This is not the first time that the gods of the main world have faced this strange and powerful alchemical creation. And naturally they know that close combat is its weakness. Although the power of naval guns is powerful, they cannot be manipulated as freely as divine magic. They can easily cause accidental damage. Once they get close, it is equivalent to destroying most of the enemy's means. In less than half an hour, more than 30 galaxy-level battleships were destroyed. But 5 gods also fell on the spot. Alt alone solved a total of 17 battleships, which shows how powerful the sun god is. Destroying a star is not difficult for geometric civilization. But that is because stars have no intelligence and will not resist. If this power is in the hands of an intelligent life form, it can only be described as terrifying. However, the geometric civilization is not without solutions. In the more than 10 years since they have been in contact with the Magic Empire, their technology has once again achieved a leap forward. Whether it is the acquisition of magic power or the higher dimensional power displayed by Lin En, the geometric civilization has made great progress. Researchers have benefited a lot. The warp engine technology has been broken long ago, and various weapons and protection systems developed based on magic have been installed in batches. If they are given a few more decades, they can truly achieve the promotion of civilization level. The defeat in the last war also allowed the Histar people to sum up how to deal with these gods. Manager Mini conducted the command in an orderly manner. After showing the enemy that he was weak and introducing art into the formation, he ordered 10 ships to carry artificial weapons. The battleships of black hole weapons surrounded the sun god from top to bottom, left to right, and then exploded directly. 10 black hole cores were aroused at the same time, and the terrible gravity directly tore all its divine body into pieces. And all the nearby battleships and gods were also involved. After paying the price of 20 battleships again, the terrible sun god Alt was successfully eliminated, and the 4 weak and medium power gods who were affected also perished. The death of a great god slowed down the offensive of the gods in the main world. However, with the expansion of the time and space gate, more and more gods came one after another, and the legions under their command seemed endless. At this moment, Lin En had no energy to observe the tragic war below, let alone intervene. He even withdrew his avatar, because the surrounding star field with a diameter of hundreds of billions of kilometers was being eroded and covered by some powerful force. This was the power of the Lord God. The Battle for the Divine Realm. Chapter 682. The Crisis of the Universe. The main gods coming one after another. In the high-dimensional space that cannot be seen with the naked eye, gray-white silk threads are continuously pouring out from the space-time gate, winding up along the curve of space-time. This was the first time that Lin En could see so intuitively how the realm erodes time and space. The magic power containing will seem to cover the surface of space, and the two merged into one. Obviously, a certain god has taken action. Lin En would naturally not let this star field be controlled by his opponent, so the counterattack had begun early. 2 terrifying forces continued to impact and collide in the same star field. It seems silent, but it is equally dangerous. Below, the God of Storms had just achieved victory by destroying 3 Galaxy-class battleships, and was torn in half by the sudden emergence of space-time turbulence a second later. The same scene appeared everywhere on the battlefield. Every minute and every second, unlucky battleships or invaders from the main world were killed by the sudden appearance of space-time rifts, and quantum tides became extremely frequent. After all, Lin En was fighting at home. He had 6 planetary pastures with 10 times the flow rate as his endurance. The stars in his body were also constantly replenishing his lost divine power. He soon compressed the erosion area that spread hundreds of millions of kilometers to about 10 million kilometers. This means that most of the entire battlefield will be controlled by him. Within 2 or 3 hours at most, the opponent's power will be completely expelled from this star field, and Lin will be able to use the opportunity to close the time and space gate. As the scope of control of the divine domain gradually narrowed, the unbearable main god Moragos finally appeared in front of Lin En. Wisps of pure white feathers floated down from the void, forming a pair of huge wings. What was covered under the wings was an extremely weird figure. Lin never thought that light and darkness could exist in one creature at the same time. On the body, it is the ultimate black from white, and it is also the ultimate white from black. At the moment of appearance, Lord God Moragos had already launched the first offensive. Many white feathers scattered on the outside stagnated in place, and then began to crack. Incomparably bright light suddenly emerged in the dark void, with a range of the entire star field. Unable to dodge, and no need to dodge, Lin stretched out his hand lightly, and a thick layer of gold material appeared in front of him. Gold has a high density, but is soft and has good ductility. It is not a metal suitable for protection. But before the bright light arrived, Lin's voice suddenly sounded. Here! Gold can reflect all external energy. The moment the words fell, the rays that had just touched the metal surface were all reflected back, colliding with each other and melting. Under the blessing of the law, this golden wall, which is less than 1 meter thick and 3 meters wide, is the most powerful shield, and can also be used as the most terrifying sword. Gold is extremely malleable, and can be compressed into a plane with a diameter less than 0.1 nanometer in the extreme state. Its length increases 1 billion times in an instant. It is like a magic sword cutting off the light. And it is also cut off. There are also dimensional boundaries. However, the figure of the main god Moragos is no longer there. The speed of gold and other materials in the universe has its limit after all. Even with the blessing of force field magic, it cannot be faster than the reaction speed of the main god level. After a short confrontation, neither side gained any advantage. But Lin En's heart sank, because the space-time gate that ran through the 2 sessions had expanded again, and a powerful aura was in the void space. Diffuse? So fast! Lennon looked solemn. He had already guessed that this was the arrival of the second main god. Sure enough, an illusory light and shadow quickly squeezed out of time and space. Somewhere between true and false. As if it did not exist in this universe. What caught Len's attention the most was the vertical pupil located between the light and shadow's eyebrows. It was very similar to the eye on Morgo's head. It was also the only thing that could be clearly seen in his field of vision. It looks like a 4K quality object appears in the middle of the 480p video. Which looks very awkward. The next moment, the vertical pupils looked over. Len, who was stared at, immediately felt a chill that penetrated into his bones. And then half of his body exploded. What happened? Lennon's expression changed. He didn't realize when the other party moved his hand. And the attack was sudden and direct on him. At the same moment, the main god Morgos also took action. With a slight flip of his palm, the surrounding airspace suddenly squeezed inward, directly crushing Len in the center. The energy wave of destruction filled the space. But there was no trace of joy on the face of Lord God Morgos. Because the magic power belonging to Len in the surrounding star field had not dissipated, but on the contrary continued to increase. Lines of pure white chains extend from the surrounding space, overlapping to form a giant network that covers the entire star field. This is the lock of the mathematical Olympiad. However, these chains began to corrode and break before they even got close to Morgos. The illusory light and shadow that came out of the time and space door faced the rolling arcane locks without any intention of evading. Dozens of chains penetrated directly through his body without causing any obstruction. As if they stayed in place? The ground is just a false projection. This made Len's frown deepen. Could it be that it is similar to the priesthood of lies? And it is just a phantom that I hit? This idea immediately emerged in Lennon's mind. But there is another possibility. That is, the opponent is in a higher dimension. So it cannot be directly attacked. Just as he was thinking about it, a sense of crisis emerged in Lennon's mind again. Just now, when he took action, he also exposed his location. Lennon concentrated on it, maxing out his perception, but still couldn't see the trajectory of the attack, and could only barely see the target. A bright particle of light appeared in front of him without warning, carrying a strong aura of destruction, and exploded his body in an instant. Even though the two attacks did not damage the real core, they still made the situation on the field turn for the worse. With the two main gods joining forces, Len was undoubtedly in an extremely passive situation. He even failed to do anything in the two attempts. It is clear how the second coming Lord God launched his attack. More importantly, as more and more gods die on the battlefield below, the connection between the main world and the universe is becoming stronger, and the spacetime gate can easily accommodate the entry of existences at the level of the main god. Len knew very well that if this continued, the arrival of the third Lord God would not be far away. Chapter 683, If you want to fight against fate, you can only rely on power other than fate. For the glory of the God of Judgment, the gods are with me! The legends who rushed into the universe from the gate of time and space let out exciting war cries, and a wave of fanatical emotions arose in their hearts. There was only one thought left in their minds, which was to kill everyone in sight. The enemy then launched a suicidal attack towards the huge warships in the distance. Powerful legendary spells are meaningless on the scale of a star field that is tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of kilometers away. Often the battle is over, and the attack has not yet reached the enemy, even though the war cries they sent out could not be transmitted at all in the empty space of the universe. And even though such a charge was no different from sending someone to death, these legendary sacrifices were not meaningless, and their existence provided a supplement to the divine power of the descending gods. Death can also increase the speed at which God's domain erodes this area. And within the coverage of this divine domain, the beings descending from the universe can almost exert more than 90% of their strength, which also makes the battle situation more tragic. In just 3 hours, more than 40 gods have died in the big universe. The high-end combat power equivalent to 1/3 of the main world has all fallen. The fleet of the geometric civilization also suffered heavy losses, with more than 500 battleships, was blown up directly. Although the geometry fleet possesses terrifying weapons such as man-made black holes that can hurt the Lord God, they dare not use them at such a close distance. The gods who suffered a big loss from this have also become extremely cautious, clinging to the main force of the fleet and not daring to leave too far. If the other party dares to use such terrifying weapons, it will be a common death move. In the same star field, in a higher dimensional space, the battle has also entered a fierce stage. Several gaps have been opened in the divine realm composed of magic power, and the quantum tide continues to surge, swallowing up all three people inside. Your defeat has been doomed for a long time. The Lord God of the foreign land. The judgment of fate is today.
Erratic sounds continue to resound in the surging quantum tide. This is not just empty talk, but the real power of destiny. Lin enforceably withstood the 9th sudden tidal disaster, and already roughly knew the other party's abilities, which should be related to fate and time. The other party's timeline is ahead of everyone else's. Although it is not appropriate to say this, because according to the rules of the universe, the essence of time is the movement of objects. So there is no situation where the timeline is moved forward. But this is the most appropriate description that Lin can think of. The reason why the opponent's attack cannot be avoided is because the attack has arrived from the future to the present. Countless possibilities regarding the timeline flashed through Lin's mind one by one. This situation was undoubtedly beyond the scope of his knowledge. There was no relevant information in either the federal database or the dimensional theory obtained from the geometric civilization record. Everything within the light cone is destiny, and everything outside the light cone is illusion. Lin, who was quickly scanning the knowledge base, suddenly remembered this sentence. This may be the explanation before and after the timeline. In the three-dimensional universe, the speed of light is the limit. No matter with mass can exceed this limit. The so-called superlight speed they can achieve now is actually a trick. It does not increase the speed, but shortens the distance. In other words, when the cause of any explosion occurs, the result will only propagate at the speed of light, rather than taking effect immediately. For example, the average distance between the Sun and the Earth is 150 million. Based on the speed of light propagation, humans on the Earth always see the Sun as it was 8 minutes ago. Suppose that the Sun suddenly exploded one day, and it would take 8 minutes for humans on the Earth to learn the news. If the energy waves of destruction were transmitted at the speed of light, then for humans on the Earth, the destruction would be along with the spread of the event. Come! Lin guessed that there is a similar cone of light in a higher dimension. The true body of the second main god who came has always been outside his cone of light, so his attacks cannot hit him. However, the opponent's attack can arrive at the moment he senses it. This is undoubtedly a very tricky priesthood. Maybe he can be called the god of the future? Fortunately, after being seen through, the threat was greatly reduced. 3 hours of extremely passive fighting also allowed Lin En to touch the opponent's limit. The white feathers fell down again, and then gathered together to form a long whip connected by feathers. It was light, and seemed to pose no threat at all. But Lin En could sense that the powerful destructive power was blessing it, enough to it caused horrific damage to his body. Destruction, storm, judgment, darkness. In these 3 hours, the main god Morgos used more than 20 priests. Just as he predicted before, the main god can use the power of all the gods under his command, even taking back the divinity of those dead gods. However, there were exceptions. Lin En was keenly aware that the priesthood of lies that had been taken away from him, as well as the priesthoods of gods such as thunder, fire, sky, order, etc., that had fallen into the universe and were sucked into the black hole, had never been used by the other party. While thinking, the connected feather whips were already swung in front of him, and the attack came faster than that. In Lin's field of vision, the feather whips were still 100,000 kilometers away from him, but the attack had already hit him in advance. On the body, Lin En's body collapsed directly, and everything was dying under the erosion of the divine power of destruction. But Morgos, the main god who was close at hand, suddenly retreated backwards. Lin En's body was involved in a dark and deep singularity during the disintegration, but it was just a step too late. The other party had already left the event horizon of the black hole. Obviously, the two main gods jointly attack only one incarnation. This is the power of the priesthood of lies. Even beings of the same level will be temporarily confused. Only 3 seconds? With the last test, Lin completely figured out the opponent's timeline location. 3 seconds before the black hole was triggered, the god of the future made an evasive action, and the main god Morgos also evacuated almost simultaneously. There did not seem to be any delay in the communication between the two main gods, or it was lower than Lin's. En's perception limit is a billionth of a second. If you want to fight against fate, you need to use fate itself or a power other than fate. In the latter, Lin could only wait quietly for the moment when the miracle happened, but he could also do the former. Lin stretched out his hand, and 2 polymers that could not be seen clearly even with a million-fold microscope appeared in his palm. They were positive and negative neutrinos, entangled with each other in some strange manner. At the moment of their destruction, they will inspire the most original power of the universe. My attack will penetrate all dimensions. It will definitely hit. It cannot be blocked or avoided. The moment Lin En spoke, Half of the divine power in his body was directly drained. At the same time, the attack was also launched. And the target was not until the future. God. Chapter 684. This is an attack from outside destiny. Linen's sudden outburst was undoubtedly beyond the expectations of the two main gods. Although the god of the future had seen this attack 3 seconds ago, no matter how he avoided it, the group of positively and negatively entangled neutrinos followed his movements like tarsal maggots. Just like the photon in the quantum erasure delayed selection experiment. When it is emitted, it has completed the entire process, and the result has already been determined. The same is true for this group of positive and negative neutrinos. Or in other words, it is more powerful, with Linen's power to modify the laws of the universe. The moment he launched the attack, he had already hit the target. This is exactly fighting fate with fate. The god of the future also quickly gave up his plan to dodge and block. Countless choices and possibilities flashed through the vertical pupils between his eyebrows. But no matter which one, the future he saw was the one he was hit by. Picture. The attack that drained nearly half of Linen's divine power was not that easy to dodge. But this does not mean that there is no way. The illusory body of the god of the future has become more solid. And the surrounding time and space have also been affected and distorted into a ball. Since the result of the hit cannot be changed, then lengthen the process and throw the fact that you were hit into the more distant future. The main god Morgos on the side had no intention of supporting him at all. On the contrary, he rushed to the location of the spacetime gate as soon as possible. Linen was not yet confident enough to defeat a main god with just one attack. So the two anti-entangled neutrinos were just to contain the god of the future. The real target was still the expanding spacetime gate. Inside the surging spacetime vortex, a terrifying aura was gathering. Obviously the third main god is coming. Once the three main gods gather together, even Lin, who has the home court advantage, will find it difficult to do anything to contain him. This is the real factor that changes the situation of the battle. Dozens of huge polymers descended from high-dimensional time and space and blocked Lin's way. They were the creations of the Lord God Morgos. They were exactly the same as the polymers summoned by the artifact used by Og. Except in quantity. It has doubled dozens of times. However, Linen's strength has far exceeded what it was before. Even though every polymer in front of him has a combat power that is no less than that of a god, he still doesn't take him seriously. Lin stretched out his palm and pressed down gently, changing the way the energy gathered in this area. Dozens of polymer bodies in front of him immediately collapsed. It would be an excessive consumption of divine power. This change is not permanent, but happens in an instant. Fortunately, this is enough. 2 or 3 seconds are enough for Lin to reach the door of time and space. In just this moment of delay, the feather whip of the Lord God Morgos was already rolled over. Lin was hit hard without dodging. And at the same time, he also drove an anti-gravity fermion into the spacetime gate. This spacetime door, which had existed in the universe for decades and linked the two worlds, shook violently, and then began to quickly close toward the center. The boundary wall was being quickly repaired. The god of the future, who had just eliminated the positive and negative neutrinos, stared at the spacetime door that was being quickly closed and Lin, who was blocking the door, but still had no reaction at all. The main god Morgos also stopped moving because they had already seen the future 3 seconds later. Sure enough, just before the door of time and space was completely closed, the third main god arrived. A huge figure stepped out from the spacetime gate, causing the surrounding airspace to begin to tremble violently. It was a tremor in space. The huge power even caused the gods and geometric stars, who were fighting desperately in the low-dimensional space, to tremble in unison. I felt a shiver rising from my heart. Lin, on the other hand, was staring closely at the rune-like vertical pupils between the opponent's eyebrows, and then looked at the surrounding god of the future and Lord God Morgos. The appearances of the three are completely different, and the styles of the runes between the eyebrows are also different. According to Og's guess, they are similar to the god's godhead after becoming the main god, and are the authority of the main god. Now Lin doesn't think so. There must be a deeper connection between the three. My name is Sabas, the god of origin. Morgos, the god of destiny. Eager, the god of the end. 3 voices echoed throughout the star field and Lin's mind at the same time. Origin, destiny, end. A bold idea suddenly appeared in Lin's mind, and then he blurted it out without hesitation. You are all one person, and there is only one Lord God of the Lord world from beginning to end. The 3 existences and 3 images are just derivatives of the divine power, foreshadowing the past, present, and future. The Trinity. There is only one main priesthood, and that is destiny. The origin and end are both derived from destiny. The beginning and the end. The three descending gods did not explain. The rune eyes between their eyebrows bloomed with dazzling fluorescence. And the past, present and future of Lin En were reflected inside. And these images were gradually turning from clear to false. Lin En clearly felt that his divine power was rapidly draining. And even the divine realm was losing control. His body was also becoming more and more complex with the images in the three rune eyes. Vague. This is the true power of fate, which can directly erase an existence from its roots. Only when the three main gods come together can the true power of the Destiny Priest be unleashed. However, at the same moment, the momentum of the three main gods, whose power had reached the extreme, suddenly began to decline. Without any warning, a strong backlash acted on them at the same time. Lin En's illusory body became solid again, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He understood that the miracle he had been waiting for had arrived. It was not his mistake that he was a little slow when he just closed the space-time door. In fact, Lin deliberately closed the door just before the other party was about to arrive. Because as long as the three main gods come at the same time and the passage to and from is cut off, the defense of the main world will become extremely empty. The reason why hundreds of battleships in the Magic Kingdom did not participate in this war was precisely because they had other tasks, that is. When receiving his instructions, they would open the wormholes between the two worlds and go to the main world, doing everything possible to cause damage. God's domain and believers are the foundation of the power of gods. Even the main god is no exception. Once they lose both at the same time, their strength will decline and their realm will fall. Or they will fall on the spot or fall into a long sleep. Lin En was very lucky that the god of the future came first, and the god of the past remained in the main world. Otherwise, under the vision of the future, Herav and others would have been discovered before entering the main world. Chapter 685. Reversal of the battle situation. Big counterattack.
O great God of life and creation! You are the Father of all living things, and the Creator of all living things. Your humble believers hereby ask for your coming.
In the main world, the divine realm of life and creation. In the floating city, millions of Yaver people knelt down and prayed under the guidance of the sacrifices. Ever since the great Lord left this world and went to the Pantheon, he has not given them any response or guidance for nearly a year. And the continuous natural disasters during this period have reached a level that even the priests cannot cope with, which made many believers very worried. So there was this prayer ceremony that affected millions of believers. And somewhere beyond the reach of mortal eyes, the two gods were looking at this scene carefully. Ever since he was nearly killed by one of Lin's incarnations last time, the god of knowledge and alchemy was extremely suspicious that Og had betrayed the main world. So he took the initiative to apply to stay to investigate more evidence. However, the harvest these days has been almost zero. He has been monitoring this divine domain for several months, and has even obtained the memories of some senior clergy. Everything seems to be very normal. Even the chief priest only knew that Og went to the Pantheon, and didn't even know what he was going to do.
Let's go! It seems there is nothing worth noting here. Once the three main gods conquer the new world, everything will naturally come to light.
The god of poetry on the side said boringly. In his opinion, this so-called investigation is completely useless and a waste of time. The god of knowledge and alchemy felt inexplicably uneasy in his heart. And then he suddenly raised his head to look at the sky, where a powerful energy was gathering. The next moment, the blue sky was suddenly torn open.
Is OG back?
The god of poetry looked at the huge space-time rift that appeared in the sky. He subconsciously thought that the prayers of these believers had an effect, and did not immediately stop it. But what flew out of the rift in time and space was not the god of life and creation he had expected, but rather a series of rhombus-shaped galaxy-class battleships with ferocious and domineering appearances.
No, this is the alchemy creation of those wizards.
The god of knowledge and alchemy looked at this scene in horror, recognizing it at a glance, and instantly understood that his guess was not wrong. Og had indeed betrayed main world.
Your Majesty, what should we do now? Do you want to take action?
The god of poetry spoke eagerly. His priesthood is not good at fighting, and he may not be able to deal with so many opponents.
No need. It's too late. They are already here.
The god of knowledge and alchemy said with a solemn expression. The moment he finished speaking, dozens of figures surrounded them. Those were Herav, Aurora, Vittorio, and the other speakers who had completed the ascension ceremony. In order to ensure the success of this mission, it would not be an exaggeration to describe the parliament as coming out in full force. The god of knowledge and alchemy turned his attention to one of the familiar figures.
OG? Long time no see. You too?
Og greeted very casually.
How dare you betray us? Aren't you worried that when the three princes return, they will extract your soul and destroy your godhead?
The words of the god of poetry were full of horror and anger.
Don't be ridiculous.
A hint of ridicule appeared on Og's face.
The fact that we are standing here now proves that the outcome has been decided. When it comes to you, you might as well choose to defect with me. The size of the universe is beyond your imagination. It is hundreds of billions of times larger than the main world. Everyone has the possibility of becoming the Lord God.
Og was extremely enthusiastic. Said. The god of poetry did not believe Og's words. How could a plane hundreds of billions of times larger than the main world exist like that? However, seeing more and more warships flying out of the rift in time and space, the heart of the god of poetry gradually fell to the bottom.
The winner has been decided? Not necessarily. Right.
The god of knowledge and alchemy sneered and said, if it were true as Og said, the main world would have collapsed long ago due to the fall of the three main gods. But it is still in good condition now, which shows that the war is still going on. He even suspected that the wizards could not withstand the offensive of the three main gods. So they adopted a strategy of changing their families. Og raised his eyebrows. But he didn't expect to make a powerful being turn against him with his words alone. After a pause, he continued,
the vastness of the universe and the power of the magic kingdom are beyond your imagination. Since you think the situation is unclear, how about you choose to watch the battle?
The so-called watching the game naturally means staying neutral, not taking sides, or helping whoever wins. With the combined efforts of these dozen gods, it is not difficult to kill the god of knowledge and alchemy, who possesses powerful divine power. However, if the other party fights desperately, there will inevitably be casualties, and his domain will also be damaged. The most important thing is that they have no time and energy to waste here. There must be more than just these two gods staying in the main world. The god of knowledge and alchemy was silent for a while, with a slight hesitation on his face.
Your Majesty, do you really believe the words of a traitor? If those wizards really have such powerful power, why do they hide in their own plane in fear?
The god of poetry said categorically.
If the other side wins, they will never let us go.
Although the god of poetry is very clear that the power of the two of them is not enough to compete with so many gods. All he needs to do is report the news.
You make sense.
The god of knowledge and alchemy nodded. The expressions of Herav and Vittorio suddenly turned cold. But before they decided to take action, the god of knowledge and alchemy took action first, slashing at the unprepared god of poetry without any warning, and peeling off his godhead in the eyes of the other party in shock and confusion.
Wise choice.
Og was not surprised at all by what the god of knowledge and alchemy did, and said with a smile,
we will not touch your divine domain, and we will report your actions to that adult later. But now I ask for your cooperation.
A dozen of the surrounding speakers cast spells together, and a huge alchemy circle soon surrounded the god of knowledge and alchemy. The latter saw the effect of this magic circle at a glance, so he did not resist, but continued to look up at the sky. In just a moment, more than 400 warships had entered the main world. These alchemical creations looked so new, with no signs of damage or battle on their surfaces. This showed that his previous guess was wrong. Those wizards were able to deal with the invasion of the main world while mobilizing so much power to counterattack. No matter what the reason was, it was enough to prove that the opponent's power was beyond their expectations. Chapter 686 Judgment of Trillions of Creatures in the Main World. With the combined efforts of more than a dozen gods, the god of knowledge and alchemy was quickly sealed within the alchemy circle. Even with the power of a powerful god, it would take at least several hours to destroy and crack it under heavy restrictions. As for directly persuading him to surrender, Og has never considered it at all, and he is not worried about keeping such a time bomb next to him.
You stay and watch him. I'm afraid we will still have a lot of enemies to deal with.
Herav ordered to a star god who had just completed his promotion. Although the god of knowledge and alchemy was bound voluntarily, Herav did not relax his vigilance because of this. Og on the side began to mobilize his power from the moment he entered the main world. He was preparing to separate the divine realm from the main world, and to stay as far away as possible to avoid being affected by the subsequent battle. This process is not complicated. The structure of the entire main world is somewhat similar to a galaxy. But there is one difference. That is, the core is not the sun, but a huge plane created by the three main gods. And this plane uses strong gravity to bind the realm of the gods, and even captures a star to provide a light source, which is the sun of the main world.
No wonder the church adheres to geocentrism so much. It's probably because Ellis saw something from the memory of Diana, the god of the moon.
Listening to Og's introduction to the structure of the main world, Raphael was amazed. They were heretics here. This level of transformation can barely be achieved by the current parliament. So Herav and others did not make a fuss. On the contrary, the news coming from the Magic Network was very bad. The Star Fleet that has taken this step has already encountered resistance from other gods. Just as Lin In predicted, the gods of the main world spent a lot of money on the invasion of the universe. The three main gods, all the great gods, and 70% of the gods with powerful divine power all left. But even the protective power left behind is still terrifying. Judging from the report, there were 27 gods who blocked them. In addition, the fleet was also attacked by a group of powerful monsters. It was obvious that the Lord Gods were not unprepared before leaving. Number 0143, 0279, and 0286 conducted a feint attack to gather these dimensional behemoths. The third column used dimensional traps. And then, they all attacked me. Attack! Dennis' eyes were fixed on the hundreds of projection screens in front of him. And he continued to convey orders to each team, successfully annihilating hundreds of starry sky beasts together. Just as the crew inside the ship cheered loudly, a strong alarm suddenly sounded. On the display screen, hundreds of red dots suddenly appeared less than 10 kilometers away from them. Unknowingly, these starry sky beasts had quietly touched the surroundings of the command ship. How is it possible? The outer protection should not have been breached. A crew member widened his eyes and looked at the alarm on the light screen in disbelief. He even wondered if there was an error in the detector. Damn! They must have done it on purpose. Dennis's face suddenly became a little ugly, and he immediately realized that the other party had just taken the initiative to get into the trap, with the purpose of finding their command ship. Start the dimension jump immediately. Dennis issued the order without hesitation and pressed the start button. The next moment, the command ship and the 12 frigates disappeared into the three-dimensional space. However, the alarm did not disappear, but became louder and louder, because those starry sky beasts also followed. Only then did Dennis understand how the other party broke through the blockade of the outer fleet. In fact, some ships with high-dimensional detection devices are also installed. However, because several formations were mobilized to encircle and suppress hundreds of starry behemoths, there were obvious loopholes in the protective circle. This is how the other party sneaked in. Dennis was quite upset that he was put in the wrong position for the first time he commanded a battle. Compared with the geometric civilization's proficiency in space-air combat, the Council has never fought any decent cross-border wars at all, and its experience is really limited. Even if it simulates tens of thousands of people in the Magic Network with a degree of 99.999% realism times, it cannot completely replace the role of actual combat. Dennis immediately commanded the fleet to return to the three-dimensional space to avoid further wasting energy. Then the 12 frigates immediately rushed forward to buy time for the command ship to evacuate. The rest of the battle fleet had already received the news that the command ship was under attack. However, at this moment, thousands of starry sky beasts were already surrounding them. It was easy to hit friendly forces by indiscriminate use of naval guns, so they could only release sentries for support. These individual aircraft, which are about 5 meters in diameter, are controlled by a psychic wizard. They are also propelled by a curvature engine and can reach a speed of about twice the speed of light. The only problem is that the fuel is limited and the combat radius is short. But it is very useful in dangerous close combat. Countless sentries quickly rushed into the group of giant beasts in the starry sky. Their dexterous size and extremely fast speed allowed them to ignore most of the attacks. And the annihilating light that flew out of the perforation was even more intense, caused great damage. The most powerful thing is the destructive power caused by the Sentinel's self-destruction. The 5-meter-sized aircraft was as small as a silver needle in front of the huge starry sky beasts. It crashed directly into the bodies of the giant beasts at twice the speed of light. And then the gravity bomb inside was directly detonated. It was even bigger than itself. Thousands of times as many enemies perished together. However, not all attacks can be effective. After the first wave of offensive caused huge casualties, the other starry sky beasts quickly came up with strategies to deal with it. Waves of high-frequency energy waves continued to erupt from the huge mouth of the abyss. Go out and detonate the approaching sentries in advance. Ask the 5th and 7th squadrons to assist, and let the sentries carry out remote harassment. The remaining fleets will continue their mission for me. Go ahead and let Dick take charge of the next command. Dennis continued to communicate. Since there was no hope of breaking through, then simply use this command ship to contain these starry sky beasts. He was ready to sacrifice, and could only pray in his heart that the mission on the other side could be completed smoothly. At the same time, under the cover of a large number of teammates, the 11th Fleet, which was one step ahead, had broken through the blockade of a large group of starry sky beasts. and intuitively saw the true appearance of the main world with their eyes. It was a huge continent suspended in the void, too big to be described in words. It was probably more than 100 million kilometers in diameter. It was guarded by hundreds of bright stars, and on the outside was a circle of divine light. Ring. Chapter 687 Judgment of Trillions of Creatures in the Main World.
This is too big.
As the temporary commander of the 11th Fleet, Lydia looked at the huge plane suspended in the void in front of her and was speechless. She vaguely remembered that when she first took a spaceship to the universe, she saw the huge star standing in the center of the galaxy. At that time, she just thought that it was the biggest thing in the universe. However, the diameter of the continent in front of us is hundreds of times larger than the sun.
How do the creatures on this planet overcome gravity?
Eric said incredulously. Based on the mass of this planet, I am afraid that only beings above the legendary level can survive inside.
The gravity here should have been modified. Otherwise, this continent would definitely be squeezed into a spherical shape. The power of the Lord God is really terrifying,
a great alchemist said with emotion. Alok stared at the continent in front of him and suddenly spoke.
There should be many creatures in such a big world. Right.
As soon as these words came out, everyone present immediately realized that what they needed to do was a terrifying thing, which was to issue judgment on the trillions of intelligent beings and even more low-intelligent life forms in the main world. The pressure in their hearts suddenly rose. But everyone knew that this was a life-and-death war involving the survival of civilization and the plane. And there was no room for sympathy. After entering the attack range, Lydia had already conveyed the attack instructions. The front LS of the 100 battleships of the 11th Fleet immediately unfolded. And after a few seconds of gathering, the powerful energy blasted towards the suspended continent. This is one of the ultimate weapons of the Galaxy battleship, Star Destroyer cannon. One shot can directly blow up a planet that lacks protection. The power is terrifying. And of course, the energy consumed is equally terrifying. However, hundreds of powerful energy waves were blocked before approaching the huge plane. The main world was like a rock standing upright in the violent tsunami, standing still in the terrible energy impact.
What's going on?
Alok frowned in confusion.
It should be some kind of powerful force field magic,
Alchemist Roll said in a deep voice. According to his conjecture, the gods of the main world were not eliminated, but used this huge power to form a protective layer covering the outside of the main world, guiding all attacks to other directions.
Can we use the black hole core to break through?
Lydia asked quickly. Because the invasion of the main world was beyond their expectations. Only 20 black hole cores were produced. Even if 15 of them were placed in the 11th Fleet, one was one less. They had to ensure they hit. This is also there was no reason why Lydia used it rashly.
The distance is too far.
Roar shook his head and roughly estimated that the diameter of this protective shield from the main world is about 300 million kilometers or more. The radius of the event horizon of the core of the micro black hole is simply not enough. And we must find a way to break it. Just fine.
How about this? We can use 3 black hole cores at one time to detonate them at 3 fixed points of the protective cover. In this way, the force field protection in the internal range should be broken. And then throw the remaining black hole cores in together to let them fusion with each other should be enough to cause fatal damage to this huge plane.
An alchemist suggested.
Yes, but you need to calculate a sufficiently accurate position first.
Roar nodded. The strong gravity of the black hole core itself will affect subsequent attacks. So you must be careful. Roar then asked Lydia to continue the attack. And they needed to collect more data about the force field shield. At this moment, a solemn voice resounded in everyone's mind.
Stop it! Wizards from a foreign land! This layer of protection was put down by the Lord God himself. And it is definitely not something you can break through.
The operator of the force field protection, the great god Skarner, and the figures of a dozen gods behind him appeared in the void. They are the last force left in the main world. Naturally, Lydia would not stop attacking just because of the other party's words. The other party suddenly appeared here at this moment. Most likely just to delay time. Star Destroyer cannons were blasted out again, with huge power that made the void tremble. Seeing that the negotiation failed, Skarner and other gods did not go out, but chose to work together to maintain the operation of the force field shield. This round of Star Destroyer cannons obviously did not play any role, and they were all stopped. The relevant data was recorded to assist Roar and others in their calculations. But what worried Lydia was that these dozen gods might interfere with their next plan. Eric frowned and thought hard. He was thinking about why Skarner and others jumped out to negotiate with them. If the fleet's attack was completely useless according to what the other party said, then there should be no need for them to stop. Could it be that maintaining this protection also requires a lot of divine power?
Or there is something in this area that makes the other party feel afraid. Alok was thinking that the third round had already begun. The beams of destruction were deflected by gravity and shot into the endless void. One of the Star Destroyer cannons was deflected and pointed at a star standing in the void. A god in the main world suddenly changed his expression. Immediately gave up the protection here, flew to the star at the fastest speed, and forcibly blocked the Star Destroyer cannon. Idiot! Seeing this scene, Skarner was almost angry to death. But Lydia, who also noticed this, suddenly realized that these stars bound by the gravity of the main world should be the divine domain of the gods. The range of the protective shield does not extend there at all. The second, third, and fourth teams all turn around and hit those stars, Lydia shouted quickly. After receiving the communication, more than 30 ships immediately pointed their guns at the stars suspended in the void. There was no need to distinguish the targets, because even if they hit the wrong target, they could still support other battlefields. Seeing that their divine domain was about to be attacked, the gods could no longer hold back and turned into streams of light and flew out of the main world. Come back to me! Skarner shouted angrily. But it had no effect at all. Then his eyes became cold, and he directly gave the authority through the Lord God to manipulate the gravitational orbit of the main world, knocking these gods' realms into collision. To the fleet, each divine domain is a huge planet, under the acceleration of the gravitational orbit. The speed is also very terrifying. What is even more insidious is that in this way, those gods who planned to protect themselves and escape were cut off and had to rise up and fight with the fleet you face. Chapter 688 Judgment of Trillions of Creatures in the Main World. The beam of destruction and the radiance of divine power continue to flash in the void space, under the continuous attack of dozens of galaxy-level battleships. The huge planes that were speeding one after another were torn apart and exploded. It was accompanied by the curses and abuses uttered by the gods when they fell. If the two sides were fighting normally, with their smaller size than the battleships and versatile magic, they wouldn't have been able to fight so hard. However, Skarner controlled gravity and threw the planet in the direction of the fleet, leaving them with no possibility of retreating. Undoubtedly, it sent everyone to a dead end. A god with powerful divine power resisted 5 Star Destroyer cannons one after another, but it was all in vain. After attracting attention, Lydia directly mobilized 15 warships and bombed them wildly. Take him away directly along with the divine realm behind. Exploding these divine realms is just the beginning. Countless meteor debris with a mass of up to trillions of tons is also difficult to deal with. Even scattered neutron cannons and a large number of sentries still cannot clear them. Soon, millions of meteor swarms will be destroyed. It crashed straight into the fleet. Quickly perform a dimension jump. Lydia urgently sent a message. In fact, the moment the meteor swarm crashed into the formation, the outer fleet had already started the dimension jump. But these warships did not enter the high-dimensional space at all. The surrounding space was blocked by Skarner through the strong gravity of the main world. This misjudgment also caused more than 40 warships outside the 11th fleet to suffer varying degrees of damage under the attack of the huge meteor swarm. I figured it out! I figured it out! Roar suddenly said excitedly, quickly ran to the command podium and entered the calculated data. Attack! Attack! Lydia issued the order again. At this moment, she no longer had to worry about so much. And the remaining battleships that were still intact opened fire again. Terrifying Star Destroyer cannons erupted again. And the great god Skarner also stopped manipulating those meteor swarms, and instead focused on defense. In the past, with the help of more than a dozen gods, there was no problem in blocking the fleet's attack. But now, he could only rely on him to hold on. Fortunately, after a wave of meteor swarms, the number of warships capable of attacking was reduced by half, which greatly reduced Skarner's pressure. He believed that the power of these alchemical creations was not unlimited. As long as they could withstand a few rounds of attacks, they could make the opponent retreat in the face of difficulties, or they could persist until they returned victorious under the crown of several lords. However, just when the first round of the offensive arrived, a strong sense of crisis emerged in Skarner's mind. And then the black hole cores quietly launched under the cover of the Star Destroyer cannon offensive had reached their predetermined positions. The void illuminated by the Star Destroyer cannon suddenly became dim, and all the surrounding matter and energy were absorbed into it, and involved in the 3 extremely tiny singularities. Skarner was so horrified that he could clearly feel that the force field protection covering the main world had been torn open into 3 huge gaps. And then the tiers were expanding at the speed of light. Then one after another, the Star Destroyer cannons came over again, targeting the center of the 3 black holes. Some of the energy beams in the edge area were captured
and attracted by the 3 gravitational singularities. But the remaining ones could not be stopped by Skarner alone. They could only watch these destructive beams flying into the main world. In the main world at this moment, the originally bright and clear sky dimmed instantly. The Selders in the city raised their heads in confusion, and then saw the most terrifying scene they had ever seen in their lives. The entire sky has turned into a huge whirlpool, and streams of light of various colors are constantly surging inside, like a huge mouth of an abyss, swallowing up the main world. Miracle? Divine punishment? Or is it a sign of the end? No one knew what this was. They could only kneel down and pray crazily for God's forgiveness. However, they did not receive any response. Some priests were horrified to find that their magical powers could no longer be used. The changes in the sky continued. Since this area was located further outside the coverage area of a black hole's event horizon, a small amount of light beam still broke through the blockade of the vortex and fell in all directions.
Is this a meteor?
A Silder man murmured to himself.
That's not a meteor. It's a battle between gods.
A high priest looked crazy. He had lost contact with the god of storms and shouted hysterically,
Destruction! The end is coming!
The moment the high priest finished speaking, a beam of light fell less than 10 kilometers outside the city. The violent tremors overwhelmed the prayers and screams of the crowd. And then the earth was lifted up. However, their encounter was not the most terrifying, because the 10 black hole cores had also been driven into the main world, and everything under the scope was turned into chaos. After the fusion, the huge gravity even shook the sky of stars. The troposphere surging like lava was the first to be torn and involved in the main world, forming a red rainbow with a diameter of hundreds of thousands of kilometers in the void. After inhaling a huge amount of matter, the gravity of the huge black hole has increased to a terrifying level, and the entire sun is being pulled down. Skarner could only watch this scene helplessly, and then began to run away frantically. He could not resist it all, but he was too close to the main world, and there was no possibility of escaping. The falling sun was sucked into the vortex of time and space. The Magic Empire fleet did not dare to stop at all after launching this attack, and fled in the opposite direction without hesitation. Even though it was such a long distance away, the dimensional detection equipment could still clearly sense the strong gravity. If it did not run away, when the black hole's event horizon expands, they will also be killed together. According to this, on the interstellar battlefield billions of kilometers away, Dennis, who was in a life-or-death situation and was about to fight for his victory, suddenly discovered that the starry sky beasts that were chasing and surrounding him were suddenly scurrying around like headless flies, and they no longer had the same ferocity and fierceness as before. Cunning. He immediately realized that it was Lydia and others who succeeded.
Everyone! Victory is right in front of you! Counterattack! Counterattack!
Dennis pulled over the communication device and shouted loudly, commanding the fleet to wipe out these out-of-control starry sky beasts one by one. The same scene also appeared in the big universe. With the collapse of the divine realm and the death of believers, many gods suddenly discovered that their power was fading, and the power of divine magic was also greatly reduced. An unlucky powerful god held his own. With a strong body, he tried to catch a Star Destroyer cannon, but as his divine power declined, he was directly blasted into ashes by the cannon. Chapter 689 Lin, now my destiny is in my hands.
What happened?
Seeing the powerful gods in front of him suddenly wilt like a general illness, and being easily killed by naval guns, Manager Moni was confused and even began to wonder if the other party was planning some conspiracy. After all, they did not gain much advantage in this war that lasted for more than 10 hours. The losses could only be described as tragic. Now the situation has suddenly reversed. It is strange to see it.
Probably the real battlefield has already decided the winner.
An adjutant guessed. Manager Moni also immediately thought of this possibility. Although these high-dimensional biological weapons possess intelligence, they may also be controlled. The fleet of the Magic Empire has not arrived for support for a long time. It seems that it is heading to a more important battlefield just as the Galaxy Governor said. This made Manager Moni a little relieved. What he was most worried about was the unfavorable situation there. Although Lennon had told him before that this war was to quell the civil strife in the Magic Empire, it was hard to say who was the rebel party, especially when thinking about the last war that broke out in this airspace. Many high-level officials of the geometric civilization wondered whether they had been taken advantage of and rashly got involved in the civil war of the Magic Empire. But it is no longer important to consider who is on the side of the rebellion. After all, for them, whoever wins is the orthodoxy. The real facts are naturally much more complicated than the Manager Moni imagined. The actions of Lydia and others to destroy the main world did deal a heavy blow to the gods. But more importantly, the three main gods were trying to take back the main world. Their power, from a higher dimensional perspective. The priesthood and remaining divine power of each fallen god are constantly converging in one direction, entering the body of Morgos, the god of destiny. At this moment, the three main gods have changed their appearance. The heavy damage caused by the destruction of the divine domain has even made it impossible for the gods of the past and the gods of the future to maintain their basic shapes. So they simply merged into one again. The wings that cover the sky, the three heads, and the overlapping body of reality and reality appear extremely grotesque in the three-dimensional space. As chaotic and unpredictable as fate. His opponent was an extremely huge three-legged golden crow, with boundless light leaping out from around it, making the entire void look like daylight. This golden crow is naturally Lin-En's creation. It is composed of part of the energy of a star. No matter what kind of attack it is attacked, as long as there is sufficient energy supplement, it can continue to recover. It is an excellent helper for testing opponents. It is by no means an easy task to seal it. The god of destiny, Morgos, has tried several times, but with Lin's support and even sneak attacks, there is no such chance. Morgos knew extremely well that the other party was trying to forcefully consume him to death. Without the supply of divine realm and believers, his power had declined significantly. Taking back the divine power and priesthood of the gods is nothing more than drinking poison to quench thirst. After all, if a god dies, one less god will be lost. And it will also bring down other battlefields, allowing the opponent to mobilize more power to deal with him. But even with many shortcomings, Morgos still chose to do this. If he wanted to break the situation, he had to kill the main god of the foreign land in a short time. As for the collapsed divine realm and the dead gods, as long as he could win, everything lost can naturally be reestablished. The vastness of this world exceeds Morgos' expectations. If it can be turned into a divine realm, he may be able to peek into the realm above the main god. While thinking about it, the vertical pupils on the three heads suddenly glowed with bright fluorescence. After taking back part of the power given to the gods, he could finally use the power of destiny again. The huge golden crow had already flown in front of Morgos. Without even the slightest movement, the Lord God disappeared from the spot. Even Lin-En could not sense where the other party was. And then the chains of judgment followed. It appeared out of thin air in the surrounding airspace, and tied up this difficult bird. Morgos gave Lin no chance to rescue him. When he reappeared, he had already arrived in front of Lin in 3 parts. And strong fluctuations of divine power erupted in the void of the universe. 3 attacks were launched at the same time, locking the past, present and future. Lin-En was not panicked. Compared with the power of destiny that had just arrived, and was so powerful that it could directly wipe him out from the root. Such an attack was no longer enough to pose a fatal threat to him. Just because you can't avoid it doesn't mean you can't survive it. Lin-En activated the mathematical Olympiad again, and the quantum laws within thousands of kilometers around him quietly changed. All attacks are inseparable from the use of energy. As long as the composition of the energy itself changes, the attack will naturally be disintegrated. Just as he expected, the 3 attacks from different times and different dimensions quickly disappeared due to collapse. But before Lin-En could breathe a sigh of relief, half of his body exploded inexplicably. Another invisible attack? Lin-En frowned. It was obvious that the other party had discovered the flaw that his method of modifying the law could not be maintained for a long time, and could transfer part of the attack to the past or future at will. This ability is undoubtedly very powerful. So even if he plays a trick and gains a huge strategic advantage, he still cannot take any advantage in this one-on-one battlefield. Lin-En quickly repaired the damaged body, thinking about how the other party interfered with the past and future. If he wanted to completely defeat the God of Destiny, he must understand the essence of the light cone of destiny. In the macroscopic world, the derivation of many things is certain. As long as we have a sufficient amount of information, the ball thrown will definitely hit the ball frame. But this is not the case at the microscopic level, because the state of the quantum is completely random. You can say with certainty that a molecule will arrive at a certain place at a certain moment, but you cannot be 100% sure of the next location of a quantum. It can only be described in terms of probabilities. Countless chaotic probabilities eventually form an orderly macroscopic world. The wonder of the big universe cannot but be admired. A large number of thoughts flashed through his mind, occupying the constant supply of power for the home battle. Lin no longer even deliberately avoided, but felt every attack of the 3 gods of destiny with his heart. Feel where they come from, and what impact they have. This decline obviously gave the main god Morgos hope. Another sudden attack.
Lennon's brain was shattered, and the chains of judgment had wrapped around his body at some point. This was the embodiment of the priesthood of judgment, and it would not happen due to changes at the quantum level. Variety. Facing a main god who can modify the laws to a certain extent in his heyday, it is easier to seal than to kill. However, Lin, who had no head and no obstruction to his vision, could clearly see how the attack acted on him this time, and the whole world changed upside down in front of him. Chapter 690, Future Vision and Destiny Review. The moment his head was exploded, Lin's mind also exploded, and a world far beyond his cognition appeared in his perception. The entire world is being stretched continuously in his eyes. This lengthening is an extremely abstract concept, not a direction that exists in cognition. It is like having an extra dimension. All the microscopic particles under perception seem to have been dismantled, and in the extending direction, countless copies of identical matter and energy appear. The only difference between them lies in their state. The state of the microscopic particles at the back is frozen in place, and everything is determined, while the microscopic particles at the front are illusory and fuzzy. Lin instantly understood that energy and the information it carries are the foundation of everything in the universe. Those frozen particles are history and the past. Those chaotic particles are the future. And the moment when quantum probability is frozen is now. The moment he saw the river of destiny. The threads of the arcane laws in his body continued to extend and connect together, and a powerful priesthood was gradually condensing. At the same moment, Lord God Morgos also noticed something was wrong, and his destiny priesthood was constantly trembling. There are usually only two possibilities for such a situation. Either someone is trying to snatch faith, or someone is condensing the priesthood related to destiny. Now it was obvious that it was the latter, and the source of the priestly tremors was right in front of him. The Lord God Morgos felt fear for the first time. Even though the divine realm collapsed and all believers died, Morgos remained calm. After all, mastering the power of destiny means being invincible. Even if he is defeated, it is impossible for the opponent to kill and seal him to things. But once the power of destiny is controlled by the other party, the situation will be reversed 180 degrees. In panic, the god of the future took the lead. Lin, whose body had been repaired, opened his eyes wide. This time he clearly saw how the god of the future attacked. Under the urging of the divine power, the collapse of the quantum probability of all chaos along the line was frozen. And this kind of the collapse is spreading here at an extremely fast speed. Is this the cone of destiny? Lin suddenly realized that there is a speed limit to the transmission of force, and time is certainly no exception. After all, the essence of time is the movement of objects. Assuming that a microparticle is isolated in a void space, its time will naturally be frozen if it suddenly vibrates due to force. And there are other particles in the space. Then the force of this movement will follow the movement between the particles. The constant collision and the effects of gravity and electromagnetic force spread in all directions. So in a sense, time also needs to be transferred. And the minimum component of this transfer is Planck time. Just as he had guessed before, the attack of the god of the future and the collapse of quantum probability occurred at the same time. And the attack had already arrived at the moment he sensed it. Therefore, the god of the future is at the front end of cause and effect, which is the starting point. He is in the future, and he exists in the past. The collapse of quantum probability happened simultaneously, and the attack had already arrived at the moment he sensed it. The god of the future is at the front end of cause and effect, the starting point, and the consequences arrive at the same time as the transmission of quantum probability collapse. So the other party is in the future, while he himself exists in the past. Lin instantly realized that after being seen through, the attack of the god of the future naturally lost its previous magic and was easily dodged. At the same time, the shackles of the locks of judgment were also broken free. Lin directly modified the rules to stagger the time point where the locks of judgment was located and the time point where he was. How could an attack launch the next second hit an entity the previous second? Therefore, the chain of judgment passed directly through Lin's body, as if passing through a non-existent shadow. Morgos' expression was extremely ugly, which undoubtedly proved that the other party had successfully mastered part of the power of destiny. Lin didn't give Morgos much chance to think. The moment he broke free from the chains of judgment, he already appeared tens of thousands of kilometers away. This speed is extremely fast, at the same speed as the collapse of quantum probability, and cannot be observed at all. Fortunately, through the eyes of the god of the future, Morgos could also see the cone of destiny and avoided it the moment he noticed Lin's movement. However, in the next second, a strong warning sign appeared in his mind. Before he could react, A shadow appeared behind him, and the beam of destruction penetrated directly from his chest, beating the entire divine body, scattered into a ball of the most basic particles. The whole process happened in an instant. After 0.001 seconds, the emerging figure and the beam of destruction disappeared without a trace, as if the attack just now did not exist. Even the beaten Morgos reappeared, with no injuries on his body. But his position had changed. There is no doubt that it was the god of the past who took action. But Future Vision's unpredictable attack just now had nothing to do with him, but was Lin En's handiwork. After gaining the ability to see the light cone of destiny, in addition to being able to influence quantum probability in advance, Lin also gained another ability, which is the observation of the past. The location and information of every microscopic particle in the divine domain is recorded in the cone of destiny, and he can interfere with it through the newly condensed destiny priesthood. It is impossible to truly go back to the past, but he can do similar things on a small scale, just like he used to use time back to return all the atoms to their original positions according to the recorded path. After condensing the priesthood of destiny, this kind of atomic-level retrospection has been strengthened. It can not only affect fermion-level microscopic particles, but also allow the opponent to appear directly in a certain position before ignoring the space. After all, distance is never a problem for microparticles. Electrons can reach the other side from one side of the three-dimensional universe in one Planck time at the moment of probability collapse. Of course, the paths he can record are very limited. Even if the opponent's divine domain has been completely suppressed, he can only barely perceive the quantum information from half a minute ago. And every use is accompanied by huge consumption. The only pity is that the first sneak attack failed to achieve the desired results. Previously, Lin thought that as long as Morgos, the main body, was eliminated, the other two gods would naturally be killed. But now it seems that it is not that simple. The main god Morgos suffered a big loss, and was almost killed. He was so frightened that he immediately summoned the gods of the past and the future. The three gods reunited into one body, and faced separate attacks from beings, who also controlled destiny. It can no longer work. If we separate, we will only be defeated by each one. Chapter 691 Your fate ends here. The main god of a foreign land. Your fate has long been determined. Your divine kingdom will collapse and your divine body will be destroyed. Your followers will be burned in the fire, and your followers will fall to the earth. Three voices resounding from the depths of the soul resounded in the void universe. This was not only a curse, but also a sentence of fate. If it were applied to an ordinary god, even if it possessed great divine power, the god's body would be shattered in just a few minutes, and the kingdom of the god would collapse. However, Lin En, who also controls the power of destiny, is extremely resistant to such attacks that manipulate destiny. In a sense, it is no different from shouting trash talk before a battle. The winner still needs to be determined by fighting. In the vast void of the universe, two beings who control the power of time, space and destiny, and are above the gods, begin a deadly battle that is beyond the cognition of low-dimensional creatures. The sequence of cause and effect, the boundaries of dimensions, and the barriers of time and space are all being broken. And the strong aftermath of divine magic is gradually spreading to the outside world. Manager Moni, who had just gained an absolute advantage, and was about to kill the remaining dozen gods, immediately discovered that the surrounding star field had become extremely strange. For example, within the field of vision, a warship that was about to attack had its disc-shaped hull twisted into a whirlpool, but it was still moving normally. However, the fired Star Destroyer cannon was no longer in a straight line, but curled up. An arc flew towards the target. Not only that, Manager Moni even found that his body also had a double image, as if it were made up of multiple spears put together. Moni was not the only one who noticed something was wrong. In fact, all the creatures in this star field saw this weird and absurd sight. Some mentally weak crew members collapsed on the ground in fear, and several crew members even fainted from fright. Don't panic! Don't panic! This is just some kind of illusion! Go back to your post! Manager Moni quickly conducted the summons in an attempt to stop the spread of panic. But verbal encouragement had little effect after all, because soon the geometry people discovered that they were not the only ones affected. But even the optical brain was no exception. The precise attacks that were originally powered by huge computing power became chaotic, and a large number of sentries were scurrying around like headless flies. The only good thing is that their enemies, those high-dimensional life forms, seemed to be also affected. A weak god who was lucky enough to survive on the cruel battlefield keeps spinning in a circle, and the rest of the more powerful ones. God's condition is slightly better, but he doesn't dare to attack rashly. The two sides, which were still fighting to the death a second ago,
are now in a strange peace. In the quantum sea that was beyond sight. The battle was coming to an end. Under Lin's offensive regardless of consumption. He successfully trapped the Lord God Moragos within a radius of several hundred meters. A large number of arcane laws are connected in series, sealing off the surrounding airspace like rune chains. Past, present, future. The three Lin appeared in the block airspace at the same time. But they wanted to use the method that Moragos had used before to completely wipe out this powerful Lord God. Of course, this erasure is not physical. After all, based on the law of conservation, energy will neither be created nor disappear out of thin air, whether it is magnetic power generation, biological ingestion of food, or nuclear explosions. What changes is only the form of energy. At most, it can only be transmitted to high-dimensional space or another world. What Lin really erased was the information carried in these particles, which is the basis of all material existence and the true mystery of the soul. There was a hint of ridicule on Moragos' face. It was tantamount to wishful thinking for a new lord who had just mastered the power of destiny to want to erase himself. The three imaginary and real figures merged, and their divine power surged. Moragos' body began to twist continuously, and countless thin lines of divine lines appeared around his body. The slender Olympiad lock on the outside began to tremble continuously under the tremendous pressure. In order to trap the master of destiny, Lin spent a lot of money. Every arcana lock is composed of a law. Once these chains break, he will be equally severely damaged. Give up your useless resistance. Lord God of a foreign land, your divine body will be pierced and your existence will be erased. Lin imitated Moragos' previous tone and mocked. But the latter ignored it and concentrated on fighting against the constraints of the arcane laws. Two extremely powerful forces are constantly colliding in the narrow airspace. The chain of laws has been tightened to the extreme and may break at any time. At the same moment, a look of extreme horror appeared on the face of the god of the future Igor. And then a group of entangled particles that could not be seen by the naked eye suddenly appeared in the blocked airspace. That was the positive and negative neutrinos that Lin spent nearly half of his divine power to create. Before, he thought that this thing had been solved by the other party. But after condensing the Destiny priesthood, he realized that it was not. This group of positive and negative entangled neutrinos has just been exiled to another dimension, and is still approaching the god of the future at an extremely slow speed. Based on its speed, it would take at least half a month to hit the target. Lin, who also controls the power of destiny, can naturally get this thing back. He had been unable to make any move before, so he was waiting for this opportunity, even though he saw the scene of the divine body being penetrated through future vision in advance. Moragos could not muster enough strength to protect this attack that contained half of Lin's divine power. He could only watch helplessly as the protection around him was penetrated one by one. Just like what was seen in the Cone of Destiny. The terrifying energy tore Moragos' body apart in an instant. Most importantly, the erasure has also begun. If the sea of consciousness of the gods is compared to a quantum computer with extraordinary computing power and a large amount of data stored, then erasing it is to format the computer. The materials that made up the body began to disintegrate, breaking down from atoms into various particles. And then the divine power above the infection began to fade away. The first to disappear was Igru, the god of the future, and then the god of the past, Sabis. The future has been cut off. The past has died, and the only thing left is the present. Moragos, your fate ends here. The three Lins also reunited as one, exerting the power of fate to the extreme. The positive and negative neutrinos that penetrated the god's body were also entangled in the body at the same moment. Together, as the sound fell, an explosion, like the beginning of the universe, bloomed in this scarred star field. Chapter 692 News from the Milky Way. The immeasurable light swept through the dark and empty space of the universe, penetrating through all dimensions, destroying everything along the way, and soon spread from top to bottom to low-dimensional space. Quickly retreat! Manager Moni issued an order for a complete evacuation the moment he realized something was wrong. However, the crew members, who were nearly collapsed due to the distortion of time, space and dimensions, were unable to execute this order. Even the ship's optical brain was affected, and the navigation route became twisted. Moni could only watch in despair as the terrifying energy waves surged towards them like a tide. With the final order, Moni only had time to use the authority of the fleet command to let the optical brain use all the energy to maintain the protective shield. And then, he was forced to accept the baptism of this terrifying energy impact. Warning! Warning! The outer energy protection has been severely damaged. Warning! The front end of the body has been damaged. Warning! The weapons system has been damaged. Almost instantly, a series of sirens rang out within the battleship. The energy shield of the spacecraft exploded without even being able to withstand it for a second. And then the hull of the spacecraft also began to dissolve. Moni was horrified in his heart. What kind of weapon could actually cause such a catastrophic impact that could be called a supernova explosion in such a large range? Fortunately, at the next moment, a giant palm stretched out from the void, blocking the front of this terrifying energy impact. It was Lin who took action. At the same time as he wiped out the main god Morgos, he detonated the positive and negative neutrinos created at the cost of half of his divine power. The power exceeded all the divine spells he had used before. After erasing Morgos, he detonated it. The out-of-control energy residue is almost equivalent to a god-level self-destruction. Even he was not sure of stopping the powerful energy impact, so he could only run away quickly. The space used for fighting collapsed. In fact, what could spread here was the aftermath that was weakened tens of thousands of times. But it was still not geometric. The fleet could resist. So Lin En came to the rescue. The gods of the main world were not so lucky. They survived the cruel interstellar war and escaped the attack of naval guns, but failed to escape the baptism of energy shock. They all fell on the big planet. Within the universe, Manager Moni, who had saved his life, immediately mobilized energy to repair the battleship. But he also understood that this was in vain. Even if the ship could be repaired, whether he could survive in the end would depend on the help of the Magic Empire. The strongest wave of energy shock lasted for several hours before it finally passed. Only then was Lin able to extract part of his power and descend into the main ship in the form of an incarnation.
Mr. Governor!
Manager Moni immediately put down his commanding duties and stepped forward to greet him. If he was still a little aggrieved by the actions of the Yuan-Pan leaders to betray the geometric civilization before, then after the war, he had no complaints at all. The Magic Empire was indeed powerful, and they were not able to compete with it. Not to mention anything else. The terrifying energy impact just now could destroy the entire fleet.
You have done a great job this time. I have seen the sincerity and determination of the geometry civilization.
Lin En was not shy about his words of praise. To win this decisive battle with the main world, the power of the geometry civilization is indispensable. Without them to withstand the invasion of the gods, they would not be able to mobilize enough power to counterattack the main world and reverse the entire war situation.
By the way, how are the casualties? Have they been counted?
Lin En asked in a deep voice.
We have lost a total of 737 main warships. In addition, more than 300 warships have been seriously damaged. The specific casualties have not yet been clarified, but they will be at least 1 million.
Manager Moni checked. After looking at the statistical data of Guangnao, I felt a bit frightened. Although it had been expected, Manager Moni was still frightened by the huge casualties. This time, in order to help the Magic Empire quell the chaos, they mobilized a fleet of 1,000 of the most advanced ships, and also sent reinforcements several times later. A total of more than 1,600 warships participated in the battle, with a direct loss of 60%. And the number of personnel, the loss is not small, although most of the functions on the battleship are taken over by the optical brain. A capital ship also needs at least 1,500 crew members to maintain the operation of various equipment. So even if we only count the destroyed battleships, the number of dead crew members also exceeded 1 million. Lin En nodded. Such casualties were within his expectations. This invasion of the main world was well prepared and mobilized most of the forces. It was not that easy to deal with.
Let's go back to Hong Kong now and have a good rest.
Lin patted Manager Moni's spire-shaped head and said with relief. The main body directly tore a wormhole in the void outside with bare hands, allowing the remaining geometry to the fleet passes. After several hours of energy repair, most of the damaged warships have restored their basic operational capabilities, and the remaining few ships can also be towed back to the port. On the other side of the wormhole is the galaxy closest to the geometric civilization. Lin did not let the fleet enter the floating port of the Eternal Star, lest it be seen that their technological level was not as advanced as the opponent imagined. As for the Kingdom fleet that entered the main world, due to the difference in time flow between the two sides, it took 3 days for them to return. From Dennis's narration, Lin understood that the whole process was much more thrilling than he imagined. Morgos left many behind when he left the main world. The thousands of starry sky beasts alone almost killed him. Let them suffer a big loss. Fortunately, Lydia and others successfully completed the mission. With the destruction of the main world, all resistance was collapsed at the same time, so the casualties were much less than in the frontal battlefield. About 170 ships were destroyed. This was undoubtedly a great victory. They destroyed enemies that were several times or even 10 times stronger than them in one battle. Many speakers have proposed to celebrate it, and even set up a special festival to commemorate it.
It's not the time to be happy yet. We have a lot of things to do next.
Lin En was not dazzled by the joy of defeating the enemy, because he was already busy with the aftermath of the war. First of all, it is the gods who have surrendered and been captured. Whether they should surrender or simply kill them remains to be discussed. How to maximize the use of the entire overworld as trophies is also an issue that needs to be discussed at a meeting. There is also the repair of damaged ships, comfort for casualties, lots of chores.
Sirs, this is a transmission of information from the geometric civilization. I have uploaded the content to the magic network.
A servant suddenly said. Lin paused, and then entered the magic network to check. The geometric civilization passed over a large amount of information, compared with the basic technology tree given last time. This time it is much more generous. It contains a lot of cutting-edge technological information. It seems that this battle has completely eliminated the resistance of the geometric civilization. Thoughts. But what interested Lin the most was the star map. Only now did he really see what the river system he was in looked like. The ownership of every galaxy in it was recorded. In addition, the data also contains information about more than a dozen surrounding galaxies, and one of the very close ones is highlighted in eye-catching red. This look and shape made Lin feel familiar inexplicably. 6 cantilevers, elliptical disc shape, about 100,000 light-years in diameter, etc. Lin En's expression suddenly changed. That's not it. The Milky Way? Chapter 693 Defeat the Creator's Creation. Looking at the familiar galaxy in the data, Lin was stunned for a moment. He almost doubted whether he had made a mistake. He quickly took out the galaxy in the federal database and compared it. In the previous life, the technological level of the Earth Federation was based on the differentiation of geometric civilizations, which was the threshold of the 4th level civilization. There was no way to draw a complete map of the galaxy. But comparing the two, Lin En has increased his certainty to 99%. An inexplicable emotion appeared in Lin En's mind. When he first crossed over, he still missed the Federation very much. After all, compared to being hunted down by the Holy See in the wild Middle Ages, it was naturally more convenient to live in the civilized Federation. Comfortable. At least you don't have to worry about being killed one day. Now 071, who followed him, tried to report his illegal behavior to the Federation many times. Of course, after being transformed into a godhead, Lin En erased his intelligence and increased his computing power by more than 100 million times. Previously, Lin thought that he would have no chance to return to the Federation, because the universe was so vast that it was beyond imagination. And he could not even confirm whether the two were in the same universe. Only now did he suddenly realize that the Milky Way was so close to him. Of course, this distance is also measured on the scale of the universe.
Contact me, Gerda, and ask him to come over immediately. I have something important to ask him.
Lin gave instructions, then paused and then said again,
Forget it. I'll go in person.
The Eternal Star is far away from the star field controlled by Gerda. If the other party wants to get there, even if it passes through the wormhole, it will take more than half a day to reach it. Lin En, who was very concerned about the news about the Milky Way and the Federation, left the post-war affairs to Herav and others, and directly opened a portal and entered the 0600 galaxy. Gerda was summoned and rushed over immediately. When she learned that Lin En was going to inquire about the 6-armed galaxy nearby, she immediately became a little excited.
Are you ready to take action against silicon-based civilization?
Gerda's words were full of expectation, and they gave the map of the nearby star field to the Magic Empire, which seemed to be asking for help. After all, the main fleet of the geometric civilization suffered heavy losses in the previous war, and was no longer capable of dealing with this huge threat in a short period of time. Gerda's words made Lin stun for a moment. And then he remembered that in the star map given by the other party, the Milky Way was marked in red. This is the first time he has heard of this so-called silicon-based civilization. Although there were many doubts in his mind, Lin En did not reveal anything and asked about the situation in that star field. Gerda naturally told everything she knew, and told her all the information she had learned. Since the geometric civilization completed a technological explosion more than 1,000 years ago through the study of element number 7, it has actively begun to explore the outside world. It has dealt with many civilizations within the galaxy, and unexpectedly provoked an incomparable and powerful enemy is the silicon-based civilization from the 6 cantilever galaxies next door. It is said to be silicon-based. In fact, it is more appropriate to describe it as a machine or intelligent civilization. It is only because the intelligent life forms that were destroyed and intercepted by them all use a special silicon metal as the core carrier.
As a title, the other party's technological level is not much ahead of ours, and its production efficiency and war potential can only be described as terrible,
Gerda said with palpitations. He led a fleet to participate in the last war against silicon-based civilization. The scene could only be described as overwhelming. The other party even transformed thousands of planets as war fortresses, and had hundreds of billions of inferior war weapons. Count. It can be seen that this silicon-based civilization should have mastered an advanced energy conversion device, which has a very high utilization rate of materials. Although it is not as exaggerated as the magic empire directly relying on magic power to convert materials, it is still quite terrifying. In addition, the other party controls at least half of the territory of the entire galaxy, and there is no shortage of energy at all. The army can be said to be endless. The reason why they want to study such a killer weapon as artificial black holes is to weaken the opponent's mechanical tactics. As for the origin of this silicon-based civilization, Gerda believes that it can never be a creation of nature. According to some scientific researchers, there are roughly two possibilities. The first opponent is a war machine under the control of a powerful civilization. The second is just the opposite. The silicon-based civilization successfully resisted and created its own civilization and gained independence. Judging from his contacts over the years, Gerda personally feels that the latter is more likely. It is precisely because of this conjecture that geometric civilization has always been very wary of artificial intelligence technology, and there are many restrictions related to development, in order to avoid the same situation from happening.
The creator lost to his creation?
Lin raised an eyebrow. This is not impossible. After all, the body of a carbon-based life is a limitation, no matter how genetically modified. The upper limit is fixed. The computing power of a 6th-level wizard is what the brain of a carbon-based life can accept. The geometric civilization is eager to achieve universal ascension in order to break through this limit. The potential of artificial intelligence is very high. It can easily exceed this value by 10,000 times. Its ability to learn and improve is equally powerful. Even the thinking ability that intelligent life forms are most proud of is not impossible to imitate.
Then do you know why the silicon-based civilization invaded this galaxy?
Lin asked curiously.
Maybe he wants to plunder the research results of other civilizations,
Gerda said hesitantly. Intelligent civilization is not without its weaknesses. Based on huge computing power and uniform execution, it is very easy to deduce science and technology from 1 to 100. But it is very difficult to break through from 0 to 1. Lin nodded, and then asked Gerda if the geometric civilization had the coordinates to enter the Milky Way, and he was going to take a look for himself. Wouldn't this be too risky? Seeing that Lin actually planned to leave in person, Gerda subconsciously wanted to persuade him. However, thinking of Minnie's report, Lin alone blocked the energy impact that could destroy the main fleet of the geometric civilization. So he changed his words.
The coordinates are there. In a month, we will try to start a small battle at the border to attract the other party's attention, so that you can enter the hinterland of silicon-based civilization relatively safely.
Lin didn't ask for help and directly agreed. He was indeed very strong. But after all, he had to face a powerful civilization that controlled half of the river system alone. So it was better to be careful.
Then it's decided. You should prepare as soon as possible. The sooner the better.
Chapter 694 Return to the Solar System. In the vast universe, the Milky Way, and next to the Kuroka Nebula, a tiny crack suddenly appeared in the void and expanded rapidly in a very short period of time. Immediately afterwards, more than 600 disk warships emerged from it. This is the main fleet of the Geometry civilization. It has just participated in a tragic cross-border war less than a month ago, and now it is sadly set to perform the same dangerous decoy mission. It can be said that they spent a lot of money to kill their old rival silicon-based civilization. The moment more than 600 battleships arrived, a large number of strange-shaped forerunners rushed out of the nebula.
This is the lower-level war machine of silicon-based civilization. It is usually cannon fodder used to attract firepower. Its ability to fight alone is very weak, but its number is almost endless.
While commanding the fleet to attack, Manager Mooney introduced information about this war machine to Lin on the side. Judging from the wreckage they had intercepted in the past, the internal structure of this thing was very simple. There were only energy capsules, propulsion systems, and weapons inside. The device is considered a very cheap consumable. At the same time as the words rang out, hundreds of warships launched and attacked together. A large number of antimatter beams flew out, just like a sharp blade cutting through. under the precise calculation of the ship's optical brain. Tens of thousands of people flew over. Pioneer was soon submerged in the beam net. The only part of the force left in the nearby star field was naturally vulnerable to the main fleet of the geometric civilization, and was quickly annihilated without causing any waves. Manager Mini did not dare to relax at all, and his expression remained solemn. He knew very well that when the fleet attacked these cannon fodder, the news had already spread to the base station of the Silicon-based civilization. Soon, a large number of war machines would arrive through the wormhole and annihilate all enemies. The time left for them is very limited. About 10 minutes later, the sentries sent out successfully transported the captured group of advancers in. This time they were luckier and did not let the thing self-destruct successfully.
Have you ever tried to find the core of a silicon-based civilization through signal counter-tracing before?
Lin asked. Since the other party may be an intelligent mechanical civilization, it should have a core that governs everything.
I've tried it, but it doesn't work,
Manager Moni said helplessly. Lin raised his eyebrows, put his hand on one of the forerunners, and disassembled it, followed by the second, third, and fourth. After figuring out the structure of this thing, he began to dismantle it. Signal source tracking. After some investigation, Lin quickly understood why the Manager Muni said this. Because the number of signal-based stations he sensed was unbelievable, distributed in all directions of the galaxy. And it was roughly estimated that there were at least hundreds of millions of them. And each signal-based station is constantly transmitting messages.
Do you use this method to hide your core?
Lin also had a headache. Such a huge number of base stations and frequent information transmission speeds made it extremely difficult to find the core. Lin even tried to see if he could carry out reverse intrusion by disguising signals. But he was discovered immediately. The Silicon-based civilization, which controlled hundreds of millions of signal stations and controlled half of the river system, had no weaker computing power than him. On the contrary, much stronger.
Have you found it, Lord Governor?
Seeing Lin opening his eyes again, Manager Muni asked with great anticipation. In his opinion, the level of technology and civilization in the Magic Empire was so high, and there might be something to gain. Lin was also a little embarrassed, but he still pointed to one of the directions on the star map with a calm expression.
Go here and take a look first.
What Lin was referring to was the star field where the solar system was located in the federal database. This was also one of the main purposes of his trip to the Milky Way. Since he could not find the core location for the time being, he might as well revisit the old place first. Let's talk about it later. The exploration of the signal source just now was not completely fruitless. At least a large number of coordinate positions were obtained, one of which was very close to the solar system. Manager Muni had considerable trust in the technological level of the Magic Empire. The moment the enemy reinforcements arrived, he immediately commanded the fleet to enter the out-of-control wormhole that Lin tore open. The next moment, what appeared in front of everyone was an extremely spectacular sight. It was a huge modified planet. Thick metal brackets stood like giant peaks on the surface of the planet. Facing their direction, the land with a diameter of thousands of kilometers was sunken, and the red bottom could be vaguely seen. Colored lava.
Pluto?
Lin recognized it instantly. So even though this thing had been transformed beyond recognition, he had visited the Federation's base on Pluto many times in his previous life and was very impressed. It seems they have reached the outer reaches of the solar system. The sudden arrival of the geometric fleet obviously caught the opponent off guard. But the response of the Silicon-based civilization was equally fast, and the counterattack arrived immediately. Within the planet, a large number of pioneers and even larger war weapons emerged from the gaps between the giant steel peaks. In the pit as sunken as an abyss, the red light became brighter and brighter. In an instant, the terrifying core cannon was launched. This weapon that uses the core of the planet as its energy source is no more powerful than a Star Destroyer cannon. It's weak, and the battery life is almost maxed out. Not only that, in the surrounding airspace, space-time rifts are also spreading rapidly. Apparently reinforcements are coming in a steady stream from various galaxies.
The support came so quickly this time?
Manager Muni was quite surprised. You must know that they had been fighting in the Kuroka Nebula for almost half an hour before the reinforcements arrived. It seems that this star field is indeed very important. The moment Lin arrived, he expanded his divine domain, smoothing out all the time and space cracks that were constantly emerging in the void, directly cutting off the possibility of support from the opponent in a short period of time.
Attack! Attack!
Seeing Lin easily deal with the reinforcements, Muni immediately shouted excitedly. Hundreds of warships at the forefront fired their cannons together.
and the Pluto that was blocking the way was completely destroyed by the combined attacks of the Star Destroyer cannons. Then, the entire fleet quickly moved forward in the direction of the star sun. The distance between the two places was about 4.5 billion kilometers. It only took 2 hours to move forward at twice the speed of light of the curvature engine. Lenin stared at the extraordinarily flickering light spot in the distance, with mixed feelings in his heart. Maybe they accidentally chose the right place this time. This silicon-based civilization is very likely to be related to the Federation. Chapter 695 Space Monument, an Intelligent Brain. On the scale of the universe, a distance of billions of kilometers is extremely short. But for an individual in the universe, it is very long. 2 hours is enough for a silicon-based civilization to prepare for war. Even though Lin En has completed the spatial blockade of the nearby star field and prevented the other party from mobilizing the power distributed in the galaxy through the wormhole, the protective power of the solar system itself is already very powerful. Under the cover of the divine realm alone, there are tens of billions of forerunners, and there are also many more technologically advanced war machines that seem to be very difficult to deal with. They are called forerunners in the database of geometric civilization: mechanical privates, mechanical guards, and bioscavengers. What is really difficult to deal with are the 5 extremely huge planets. These planets have been transformed more thoroughly than Uranus, which is located in the outer reaches of the solar system. They have been completely mechanized and are now mobile war strongholds and production bases. Moreover, this star field is too big. As long as the distance is far enough, there will always be places that Lin's divine realm cannot reach. Reinforcements will eventually arrive, and they can only be delayed as much as possible. The 7th, 12th, and 13th fleets continue the decoy mission to lure them all over. The 4th and 11th fleets use the dimensional net. Despite the extremely urgent situation, Manager Mooney still calmly conducted the command surrounded by a large number of war machines. The power of silicon-based civilization is self-evident, but geometric civilization is not as good as before, especially in terms of research on dimensions. A substantial breakthrough. Now, use artificial black holes to let them see the methods of geometric civilization. Manager Mooney excitedly pressed the launch button, and a fist-sized gravity source flew out of the launch port of the main ship. Immediately afterwards, the more than 400 warships present immediately started dimensional jumping. Tens of billions of war weapons were undoubtedly in vain. The next moment, the fist-sized core began to collapse, and the terrifying gravity immediately sucked the weak Forerunner into it, followed by those even larger mechanical soldiers. And finally 5 huge planets were shaken and fell into the direction of the black hole. One after another, the core cannons continued to blast into the interior of the black hole. However, these were just meaningless resistance, and all the energy would only become nourishment for the black hole. When the 600 warships reappeared, they had already reached a position less than 1 billion kilometers away from the star. The dimension jump of the geometry fleet just now was not to evacuate backwards, but to bring the distance closer again by a big step. Of course, the fact that Mooney's decoy tactics can go so smoothly is also due to Lin's divine domain blocking the surrounding time and space, so that they do not have to worry about the opponent using techniques similar to dimensional traps. Otherwise they would use them at such a close distance. Artificial black holes are an act of mutual destruction. First Fleet, take out all the inventory and prepare to destroy the entire star field. After successfully arriving at the predetermined location, Manager Mooney said without hesitation, 90% of the control core of silicon-based civilization is located in this star field. Mooney doesn't know where it is. Fortunately, he doesn't need to know. Wouldn't it be better to simply destroy the entire galaxy in one go? Wait a minute! Lin En suddenly spoke, stopping Mooney's next move. What's the matter, Lord Governor? Mooney asked eagerly. He had finally managed to create such a perfect situation. If the delay was too long and the silicon-based civilization was allowed to transfer the core data, then their efforts would be in vain. I probably already know where the core is, Lin said directly. You continue to attract the other party's main force here. I will come as soon as I go. After the words fell, Lin didn't give Mooney a chance to ask. He took one step and disappeared into the battleship. All the geometric stars in the ship looked at each other, but they could only carry out the order helplessly. Lin En on the other side has quietly descended through high-dimensional space to an extremely familiar place, the Earth. In front of you is a huge monument with a height of 100 meters, carved into a spaceship heading into the starry sky. Below it is a piece of evocative history of human spaceflight written in more than a dozen different languages. This is the landmark building of the Federal Space Command, the Space Monument. It's just that this huge sculpture is not as clean and tidy as I remembered. It is covered under a thick layer of black ash,
And there are also traces of wind erosion on the outside. How long has it been? Lin sighed faintly. Under the coverage of his divine domain, the entire earth was desolate. Huge urban clusters were dismantled and fragmented. Instead, production bases covering an area of more than 10,000 miles were erected one after another. What surprised Lin the most was that there was nothing underneath that thick rock formation. Silicon-based civilization directly hollowed out the underground of the planet. The core should be hidden underneath here. Realizing this, Lenin's body began to disappear. The thick bricks under him were like non-existent hallucinations, and his body sank straight down, passing through 10 kilometers of rock formations. The interior is a steel jungle, with countless metal structures crisscrossing it, and a large number of strange-looking mechanical guards passing through it. But they completely ignore Lin, who is descending rapidly. Faintly, dots of fluorescence appeared in front of his eyes, and Lin looked over. The place that should have been the center of the earth has now been replaced by a huge metal brain. Just when Lin was less than 5 kilometers away from the metal brain, a sharp notification sound suddenly sounded. Warning. Warning. Intruder spotted. Almost instantly, gun muzzles extended out from the standing metal frame. The surrounding cruising mechanical guards and engineering ships undergoing repair work also swarmed in, surrounding Lin. Have you been discovered? Lin looked as usual, stretched out his hand, and snapped his fingers. Under the modification of quantum laws, all technological weapons were scrapped at this moment. Lin also deliberately and thoughtfully moved the divine realm away from the location of the metal brain to avoid killing the core at the same time. All protection suddenly failed, and even the intelligent core with hundreds of millions of database stations was stuck for a tenth of a second. Because even if the entire database was searched, this strange situation could not be explained. Unknown high-dimensional life form. Extremely dangerous. The probability of winning is less than 1 in a million. Start data transfer immediately. With the blessing of huge computing power, the intelligent core quickly came to the conclusion that it was invincible, and all data began to be quickly transferred to several spare brains. However, Lin had long been on guard against this, and directly blocked all nearby dimensions. Now the entire Earth is in an independent space, and no information can be transmitted through higher dimensions. Chapter 696. The Federation and the Survival of Humanity. Warning! The fourth dimension is blocked. Warning! There is an error in quantum communication. Rapid electronic sounds began to resound deep in the Earth's core, and became louder and louder. A strong energy condensed inside the metal brain. Lin vaguely felt something familiar from this energy. This is an offensive weapon used within the core for emergencies. It possesses quantum-level destructive power. The only problem is that the distance between the two parties is too close, which may damage the main body that maintains the database. But now it's obvious that they can no longer care about that much. Only by fighting back can there be a glimmer of hope of victory. Just when the quantum erase program was about to start, Lin suddenly shouted, "Zero?" For a moment, the metal brain seemed to be stuck. And then a blue light flew out from the core and swept across Lin's body from top to bottom. At the same moment, Lin's body became a little more unreal, and then became solid again. And the beep of the metal brain sounded again. BioRay scan preliminary confirmation. The target is a carbon-based life form, a human being, and its physical characteristics are unrecorded. Very good. It seems that the other party is not capable of seeing through magic mimicry, and even abides by the Federal Intelligence regulations. Lin's expression relaxed a little. Now he was completely human. Or in other words, he perfectly met all the characteristics of the definition of human. According to the Federation's fourth mechanical law, artificial intelligence has no right to attack a human unless it obtains a permission order of level 3 or above. However, this also brought up a question. Previously, Lin thought that Zero broke through these intelligent regulations, counterattacked the creator of mankind, seized control of the Earth, and then moved towards the star field. Now it seems that there is no such thing. So simple. Thinking of this, Lin tried again. I am recorder number 097841. A 6th level manager. If Zero still abides by federal laws, then according to Article 19 and Article 31 of the Intelligent Management Regulations, in the event of a possible interstellar war or cosmic disaster, once all the highest level managers die, Artificial Intelligence Intelligent Management Authority will be delegated step by step. According to this regulation, he will have the command authority of Zero. Information retrieval. Warning. Recorder number 097841 is dead. 37% chance the database is read. Warning. Warning. Lin ignored the alarms that kept popping up in his mind and continued to confirm the news of his death.
Can you tell me how I died?
Lin was extremely curious. This episode was not in his memory. He only remembered that he was responsible for recording a very important quantum experiment that day. Then the memory is interrupted. In the next second, Lin's confusion was resolved. Observer number 097841 died in an experimental accident. Really? Lennon's face showed a look of understanding. And then he spoke freely.
Death is not the end. The magic of the quantum realm is far beyond our imagination. During that quantum experiment, I accidentally entered a higher dimensional space and gained a very magical power from within. So I survived. So far, I remember that there should be records about quantum ghosts in the database.
The results of the quantum ghost experiment are doubtful, and the database has been sealed. Please prove it yourself.
Lin, age of death is 29. Date of birth is 2520 in the federal calendar. Unmarried. Graduated from the 13th Federal Engineering Research Institute. Resume is...
Lin recounted all the information he had recorded in the federal database. This is due to the excellent memory and thinking ability after becoming a wizard. Otherwise, it would have been forgotten after such a long time. During database comparison. Warning. The target does not match the appearance of observer code 097841. Warning. The probability of the database being read has increased to 63.75. The corner of Lin's mouth twitched slightly. His appearance should have been recorded when he entered the Earth. So when he was scanned just now, he did not change his appearance back to the original. There is really no good way to prove himself now. It's my own problem of the century.
Since you think you can't be sure, it's better to put the proof aside for now. Can you tell me how long it has been since 2549 in the federal calendar?
Lin asked thoughtfully. The current time is 4067 in the federal calendar.
Has it been more than 1,500 years?
Lin was also a little surprised. But considering that silicon-based civilization has become the overlord of the galaxy, 1,000 years is a bit short. The speed of this development is simply incredible. We must know that it took thousands of years for geometric civilization to reach the 6th level civilization from the 4th level civilization. This was still based on the discovery of element 7. Surprised, Lin still asked another thing he wanted to know more.
What's going on with the Federation now? Are there any humans left alive?
When she learned that the Milky Way was occupied by silicon-based civilization, Lin was already prepared for the worst. And after arriving on Earth, she extinguished the last trace of thought in her heart. What he wants to know is actually the outcome of mankind. However, Number Zero's answer was beyond his expectation. And the cold notification sound soon resounded underground. All humans currently exist in the second world.
Second world?
Lin was shocked. Is it a place similar to a small universe? Lin immediately thought of this possibility. According to geometric civilization, some powerful civilizations can separate part of the mass of the large universe and use it to create small universes, hide their own existence, and even modify the internal structure to a certain extent. Universal law. This is somewhat similar to how they packed the solar system and sent it into a higher dimensional space. In fact, from the perspective of geometric civilization, the main world is also a small universe. Has the Federation's technological level reached this level? Lin couldn't help but think of another possibility that Hatter had mentioned to him. That silicon-based civilization was the minions released by a more powerful cosmic-level civilization. Just as he was thinking about it, the beep sounded again. Author number 1. Dr. Coleman allows you to enter the second world and talk face-to-face. The next moment, the huge metal SHL opened a path for passage.
Coleman.
Lin read out this somewhat familiar name, and then stepped directly into the metal brain without fear. The inside of the metal brain is very empty and vast, with countless shining light spots emerging at the end of the field of vision. Those are huge galaxies. And this is like another universe. Chapter 697. Welcome to the second world. Facing the universe-like world in front of him, Lin regained his composure after being surprised for a tenth of a second.
Welcome to the second world.
A majestic voice resounded in the void of the universe. And then, a figure turned from virtual to real and appeared next to Lin.
Long time no see. Professor Coleman.
Lin greeted with a calm expression. He naturally recognized the person in front of him. Dr. Coleman, the most famous scientist in the Federation in his previous life. Lin, who graduated from the School of Engineering, had the opportunity to attend the other party's courses, and the two sides had only met each other a few times. Dr. Coleman obviously no longer remembers this former student, but judging from the fact that he viewed the space monument after entering the Earth and was able to accurately tell all the information about the recorder of number 097841. His previous words are still somewhat credible.
Is this the so-called second world?
Lin looked around. He saw through the universe the moment he entered.
Not bad.
Coleman nodded, with an indescribable emotion in his words.
Now all humans have entered the second world, where everyone can have everything he wants.
As the words fell, scenes appeared in front of Lin. There are ancient battlefields where battles were fought. There was a luxurious life of feasting and feasting. And there was a bizarre fantasy world in which countless people were immersed and unable to extricate themselves. Of course, these are not the real world. Lin has long recognized that the place they are in is a virtual space between reality and illusion. It's like the virtual universe he used to fool Herav and others. However, due to the huge computing power brought by the base stations throughout the galaxy, it can imitate the laws of the universe at the quantum level. For the creatures inside, it may not be any different from living in reality.
Can you tell me what happened to the Federation in these more than 1,000 years?
Lin asked in confusion. He didn't understand how the Federation, which was already a third-level galaxy civilization at that time and could barely achieve interstellar voyages, had fallen to this point. Coleman sighed before speaking.
Part of it is because of the internal war, and part of it may be my fault. The internal war? Is it related to the useless ones?
Lin realized this very keenly.
Not bad.
Coleman nodded. Lin could say the word useless, indicating that the other party was indeed recorder number 097841. The so-called useless is a self-deprecating term for the common people at the bottom of the Federation. Due to the rapid development of artificial intelligence technology, which involves all aspects, it has replaced almost 99% of jobs, and has also caused the most terrifying unemployment rate in human history. The federal response is to add a large number of meaningless jobs so that people have something to do, and to issue 1,000 credits to all people every month, which is just enough for one person's daily food, clothing, and some low-level entertainment. With the productivity of a level 3 civilization, it is still possible to meet the basic needs of tens of billions of people. However, this only temporarily postpones the conflict. After all, the terrible social class gap still exists. And there is a second huge problem. That is lifespan. Due to the maturity of genetic technology, human lifespan has been greatly increased, so that high positions are always occupied by a small group of people. A 20% concentration genetic modification drug requires 1 million federal credits to purchase. An ordinary federal citizen has to find a job and work hard for 30 years to barely save enough. As for more advanced genetic modification drugs, they are almost not available to civilians. This also makes the change of power and wealth extremely slow. This situation has caused the people at the bottom of the Federation to be divided into 3 factions. Some people are completely ruined and have completely given up their jobs. They rely on the monthly subsidy of 1,000 credit points given by the Federation to live a peaceful life. Some people work hard to make progress and climb up at all costs, hoping that one day they can become a big shot at the top and enjoy all the good things. Others are constantly wandering between the two, unwilling to accept the status quo, and want to change but are powerless. After all, no matter how hard they try, only a few can stand out. Lin in his previous life belonged to the third type of person, but his situation was slightly better. With his exceptionally good results, he successfully found a seemingly important but meaningless job recorder. On the day he joined the company, Lin knew that he would most likely stay in this position for the rest of his life. However, the recorder's work also gave Lin a deeper understanding of the Federation's predicament, which was more terrifying than he had previously expected. It can be said that there is only one torch away from change, and the torch was quickly lit. 47 years after his death, the war officially started and lasted only 9 years before being put down. Lin is not surprised by this. The federal upper echelons, who have control over artificial intelligence, are difficult to defeat. This is why they dare to hold on to their rights and not let go. Of course, these resistances are not meaningless and have caused huge turmoil to the entire Federation. The most important thing is that the contradictions have not been eliminated but show signs of further expansion. However, the warp engine technology, which was regarded as a life-saving straw by the federal leaders, has not been able to achieve a breakthrough. The federal leaders, who could not rely on interstellar immigration to absorb tens of billions of unemployed people, had to find new ways.
The new method they found is the second world.
Lin raised his eyebrows slightly. Relying on the internet and virtual games to stabilize the situation and resolve conflicts was a policy that the Federation had been implementing before he traveled through time. And it was very effective. because it only requires a small amount of resources to be consumed. It can give people a great sense of pleasure. It is the most important part of the civilian entertainment plan. Coleman nodded and agreed with Lin's guess. In the third year after the war, with the improvement of consciousness linking technology, the Federation began to vigorously promote the Second World as a way to ease social conflicts and avoid a weapon for the next civil war, especially after the successful development of emotion simulation devices for humans who have connected their consciousness to their brains and are in the virtual space. There is almost no difference between the Second World and the real world, but the difference is that the resources inside are almost unlimited. Here, anyone can experience the life they want and achieve things that cannot be done in reality. Whether it is becoming an ancient general on the battlefield, a dragon-slaying warrior in a fantasy world, or leading an interstellar war, all can be done easily. The boundaries between reality and virtuality are blurred to the extreme. Chapter 698. Who can be sure that the real universe is not a plaything in the hands of higher-dimensional civilizations?
Throwing tens of billions of unstable factors into the virtual world?
Lenin said mockingly, in order to preserve the wealth and power in his hands. It seems that the top leaders of the Federation have resorted to any means. But Lin also had to admit that this was indeed an effective strategy that could make most people voluntarily enter and indulge in it. At least it's more humane than massacre.
So they screwed up again in the end?
Lin looked at Coleman and asked again. According to the other party, the Second World should be a tool used to fool the ruling civilians to ensure that the continued rule of the top brass is not threatened. But now all mankind is involved in it. Something has obviously gone wrong.
There is no doubt that we underestimated the temptation of the Second World,
Coleman explained. Even high-level people who hold power in the Federation will inevitably have dissatisfaction in their lives. And the struggle for power is extremely cruel. So not only did a large number of people at the bottom invest in the Second World, but this trend also quickly eroded the middle people, and even some of the top people, especially their heirs. After the consciousness uploading technology was completely perfected, a large number of people at the bottom completely gave up on the real world and truly entered the digital virtual space. What followed was a more intense conflict than class division, because those people who were preparing to upload their thoughts realized an important issue. That is, the top federal officials in reality had absolute control over everything they had. You can modify your own memory at any time, or even close the entire Second World. This has undoubtedly made a large number of people at the bottom feel deeply uneasy and fearful. And the call for artificial intelligence to directly manage the Federation has become stronger and stronger. Compared with the possible Omnic rebellion, they distrust human rule even more.
Is the Federation just letting the situation deteriorate like this?
Lin was quite surprised. Coleman shook his head. By the time those federal leaders, who regarded the Second World as a life-saving straw, realized something was wrong, it was already too late. Nearly 90% of federal citizens have become highly dependent on the virtual world. And no one can stop this trend.
But why resist?
Coleman suddenly laughed.
No one can stop all mankind from entering a new world, where everyone can get what they want, and even realize their most ridiculous dreams.
Coleman kept talking about the development of the Second World, which has now developed into another universe. A digital universe. They have established a new system internally, and become the creators of the low-dimensional intelligent world. Listening to Coleman's words, Lin couldn't help but frown.
So, you just gave up on the entire material world?
It was difficult for Lin to understand such a choice. But he could imagine that the civil strife in the Federation must have had a major impact on the ideological trend of the entire society.
It's not about giving up. It's about choosing a more convenient path,
Coleman corrected. After fully liberating the potential of artificial intelligence, the warp engine technology also made breakthroughs. In just over 1,000 years, the Federation's power has been expanded to half of the galaxy, defeating hundreds of planets and even galaxy-level civilizations. Many of them have a powerful enemy whose technological level surpasses that of the Federation. This is definitely not something a Federation led by humans can do. Human beings who have entered the Second World can also enjoy their lives safely under the protection of intelligent civilization.
Aren't you worried that artificial intelligence will eventually escape control?
Lin asked curiously. When all human beings enter the virtual world and develop civilization internally, they undoubtedly leave everyone's fate in the hands of artificial intelligence. He believes that there are by no means a few civilizations in the universe that can develop artificial intelligence. But there are only a handful of people who are as crazy as humans to give up the entire material world and let it be ruled by intelligence.
Out of control?
Coleman shook his head and said with great confidence,
No, of course not. Ensuring the operation of the Second World is the meaning of zero survival.
Artificial intelligence is different from biology. The latter has undergone natural selection and has self-interest and xenophobic factors in its genes. The former is a man-made creature. They can edit the core data of artificial intelligence just like editing genes. What's more, they are now integrated with the virtual space and become part of its data.
As for giving up the material world,
Coleman paused and then asked,
who can be sure that the real physical universe is not a plaything in the hands of higher dimensional civilizations?
Lin En was silent for a while. This possibility does exist. After becoming the Lord God, he has the ability to create a complete small universe. More advanced civilizations may not be able to create a universe.
But?
Lin En turned his head and looked at the illusory universe in front of him. His sight passed through the barriers of time and space, and saw the humans immersed in countless worlds. After more than 1,000 years, people are still immersed in it and enjoy it. And it seems that it can last forever. But in Lin's eyes, all worlds and all human beings are a series of data streams. Rather than saying that the people of the Federation have entered the second world, it is better to say that Zero is virtual based on these memory data. A data human with exactly the same personality and thinking was reproduced into space. Even if Coleman talks eloquently in front of himself, saying that artificial intelligence will never be out of control, he is just a mimic of data. The civilization called humankind has long since died, and all that is left now are the SHLs of the past.
It's time to bring this to an end.
Lin sighed and spoke slowly. The moment the voice fell, the divine realm was unfolding, and the quiet and huge cosmic space in front of him suddenly trembled. Gaps opened in the space. Black holes dismembered. Stars collapsed. And dense data turbulence began to emerge in the universe.
What are you doing? Stop!
Coleman shouted in horror. He actively invited Lin to enter the second world in the hope of achieving peace through non-combat means. The two of them had been having a good discussion just now. But Coleman never expected that the other party would suddenly fall out. Lin ignored Coleman. The divine realm swept across, and the opponent had been dismembered and turned into a messy data stream. Such a strong and direct attack also ushered in the strongest counterattack from the metal brain. But the nearby time and space had long been blocked by Lin En. And the virtual space without external support could only survive layer by layer under Lin En's domineering pressure. Collapse. Chapter 699 The End of Humanity.
Warning! The second world is about to collapse. Warning! The database has been invaded. Warning! Warning!
As the god's domain continues to expand, continuous beeps begin to ring in the data space that is about to collapse. The data human beings immersed in the virtual world felt threatened and flew over from their respective planets and galaxies like crazy. Millions of galactic fleets. Gods and demons flying across the sky. Roaring dragons and ferocious monsters surrounded Lin. Magic and divine arts, fantasy and technology all attacked Lin at the same time. The scene was extremely huge. But Lin En didn't even look at it, because these were just data mimics. And they couldn't even break through his divine realm. Suddenly, an unreasonable heart palpitation appeared in his mind, and Lin En's figure disappeared in a flash. The next moment, the naval gun fired by a galaxy-level battleship suddenly penetrated the expanding divine domain and directly exploded the nearby void. The escaping aftermath tore apart the entire virtual space and even affected real time and space. But it was Zero who secretly hid the real attack in a massive false data offensive. Seeing that more and more enemies were gathering around him, it was no longer easy to distinguish the authenticity of the attacks. Lin En no longer held back. When he appeared, infinite light shot out from all parts of his body, instantly blasting away hundreds of thousands of gods and demons that rushed forward, faced with an unimaginably large gap in strength. Some fearful data humans ran away in all directions, or loudly prayed to Lin En to let them go and let the entire data plane go. Lin En ignored it and flipped his palm to take a picture again. Everything within 1,000,000 kilometers was turned into a ball of meat.
Kill him!
After realizing that the alien high-dimensional creature in front of them would not accept surrender, the data humans rushed forward like crazy. Even though they knew that they had no chance of winning, they still continued to fight, which seemed extremely tragic. Lin En, who was in the center undergoing the crusade, had a sense of déjà vu that he had become the great demon king of destruction. But he knew very well that these were just data mimics in an attempt to shake his belief.
Cut!
An antimatter sword appeared in Lin En's palm at some point. He waved his hand and slashed out. A brilliant, continuously extending sword blade cut through the surrounding void. And the data and humans along the way were killed before they could even scream. It was instantly annihilated and turned into the first data particles, disappearing into the air. However, Lin's target was not these dummy people. The antimatter sword that tore open the virtual space directly split open the data universe. As the emotion simulation device of Zero was cut off, those data humans who were either fearful or sad and angry instantly became expressionless. Zero realized that the intruder in front of him would not be affected by such tragic emotions. There will no longer be a waste of computing power here, and the entire virtual space will collapse. What appeared in front of Lin was a network connected by countless data threads, densely packed, like brain nerves distributed everywhere visible in the field of vision. The sky full of gods and demons, roaring dragons, and powerful superpowers disappeared without a trace as the data space collapsed, replaced by a large number of forerunners, mechanical guards, and war weapons of various shapes. But before further attacks could be launched, Lin raised his hand and snapped his fingers, using the arcane laws to reconstruct the formulas that made up the atoms. And the millions of mechanical legions in front of him were dismembered and exploded. At the same moment, the divine realm has covered the entire metal brain, and the Zero prompt tone has become more and more urgent. Warning. Level 3 protection has been breached. Warning. Database has been invaded. Warning. Signal cannot be searched. As the divine realm eroded, the prompt tone gradually turned from rapid to calm. Finally, the entire metal brain was twisted and dismembered, and then turned into a bright crystal suspended in Lenin's palm. This is the core of the entire silicon-based civilization. Holding it is equivalent to controlling half of the galaxy. At this moment, Lenin's mind was not here, but immersed in the vast amount of data. This was the attack launched by Zero at the last moment, trying to defeat him with the massive data. Even though the computing power of the main god level has reached a level beyond the understanding of low-level civilizations, it took Lin more than 10 hours to fully digest it. Sure enough, mankind has perished. Lin sighed. The information he obtained from the Zero database confirmed his previous speculation. All humans existing in the virtual space are data mimics. The reason why the Federation firmly believes that consciousness uploading technology is absolutely feasible is because the breakthrough of quantum ghost technology allowed them to discover that human consciousness can exist independently of the physical body, exist in a quantum form, and can even connect to data networks. And the beginning of it all lies in the quantum black box experiment number 3999. It was the quantum experiment accident that led to his death. The details and purpose of the experiment were set to a top secret level, and much of the information was deleted and destroyed during the Federation Civil War. The only thing that can be known is that a higher dimensional civilization seemed to have interfered with that experiment. It was based on the discovery of this quantum experiment that the Federation was able to successfully complete consciousness transmission and mimic emotion technology. Lin pondered and put away the core of Zero, and took one step to reach a huge industry on the Earth. This used to be the Federation's Quantum Research Institute number 11. But now it has been transformed into the Forerunner production base. Because the intelligent core was shielded, a large number of newly produced pioneers were scurrying around like headless flies, turning the entire production base into a mess. Lin shifted his high-dimensional coordinates to avoid being perceived. And then time, space and dimensions cracked in front of him, and the mysterious light cone of destiny reappeared in front of him. The particles of chaos stretched to the end, which is an unpredictable future. However, Lenin's target this time is the past whose state has been frozen. He wanted to see for himself what happened in the quantum experiment in 2549 Federal Calendar, why he traveled through time, and whether it was related to the interference of higher dimensional civilization. As the Priest of Destiny was activated, time seemed to begin to move backwards rapidly, and the surrounding production base covering an area of tens of thousands of acres was rapidly collapsing. What happened on this land in more than 1,000 years was presented to Lin in a slide-like situation. In front of, he saw the rebels capture this place, saw how the Federation's space-based weapons destroyed the land, and saw tens of thousands of steel machines building this production base in 1 month. Lin just watched silently. He was not prepared to interfere, and he had no way to interfere with the past, because all this had already become a foregone conclusion. What he saw was only the information from the past remaining in the particles. Chapter 700, the beginning of everything. The terrifying black box quantum experiment. It's about 1 minute, or 10 minutes, or 1 hour. There is no such thing as time within the light cone of destiny. This is the gap between time and space, the beginning and end of everything. Looking back for more than 1,000 years is not that easy. Even if it is only 10,000 acres of land, it has reached the upper limit of what Lin can bear. Fortunately, the timeline quickly reached October 3rd, 2549 in the Federal Calendar, the day he died. The surrounding scenes were frozen instantly. The walking crowds, rotating machines,
and jumping water molecules in the air all stood still, just like a special picture scroll. It wasn't until Lin clapped his hands that the frozen time began to flow. The next moment, the door of the hall was pushed open, and hundreds of scientific researchers wearing dust-proof suits entered the laboratory together. Lin En could clearly see himself standing among them. Lin En also followed them into the laboratory. The interior space was large, and a large vacuum experimental area was divided in the center to prevent free molecules from interfering with the experimental results. The so-called black box experiment is not really conducted in a black box. The black box is just a metaphor. After all, quantum-level reactions cannot be observed with the naked eye. The entire experiment was conducted under the control of AI intelligence, and only artificial intelligence can achieve such precise control and data monitoring. The ultimate goal of the experiment is to find the real factors causing quantum collapse. Although the theory that human observation will lead to the collapse of quantum probability has been proposed hundreds of years ago, and there are a large number of experiments to support it, many scientific researchers in the Federation are still trying to overturn this, or they want to find quantum probability, the real cause of the collapse. For example, a federal academician who studies quantum science believes that it is not the observation itself that promotes the collapse of quantum probability, but energy interference above a certain frequency. After all observational behaviors will inevitably have an impact on quantum, and the greater the mass of a substance, the less obvious its volatility is, which is also strong evidence. It's just that they didn't have instruments suitable and precise enough to confirm this in the past. Therefore, since the new century, with the breakthrough of quantum observation technology, there have been more and more similar experiments. But a key problem has still troubled the scientific community for decades. That is how to distinguish observation from interference. Some researchers feel that the energy level of the observation equipment should be reduced as much as possible, as long as the interference is small enough. They can observe the state of microparticles without quantum probability collapse. Other quantum researchers scorn the interference theory and instead focused on observers, since human observations can affect quantum collapse. What about mammals, insects, and even single-celled organisms? Where are the limits of observation? But no matter which genre you are in, you all need to do the same thing, which is to make the output process as complicated as possible. This is where the black box comes from. This special instrument will only operate when the quantum probability is at a fixed state. Once the quantum probability becomes chaotic again, the instrument will automatically stop. During the entire experiment, everything is completed by independent AI and is not connected to the external network. All data generated during the experiment will be deleted. The reason why it needs to be so rigorous is because someone had done a similar experiment 20 years ago, sealing up all the experimental data and waiting to be opened 10 or 20 years later, in an attempt to avoid quantum collapse. As a result, as long as they choose to record the data and store it, regardless of whether they choose to watch it now, the quantum probability will always be in a state of collapse. Occasionally, once or twice, the probability of chaos will often be told by the AI that there is a problem with the instrument before the researchers are happy, and the data will not be there at all. It was not recorded. Therefore, it will inevitably affect the output results of the experiment, and subsequent experiments will simply delete the data directly. Although this is a bit troublesome, it is indeed effective. After more than a year of tedious experiments, they have confirmed that some large mammals can cause quantum collapse after viewing the experimental data output by the intelligent brain, allowing quantum detection instruments to continue to function, whereas all insects tested experimentally cannot. All organisms participating in the experiment are unable to understand the meaning of these experimental data, so the observation must have nothing to do with whether they understand the meaning of the data. Cher suspects that the limit of observation may be whether the organism has basic cognitive abilities. Prepare for biological experiment number 137, Shar ordered, under the control of independent AI. All preparations were completed within 15 minutes. This time the experimental subject was a koala, which was also trapped in a black box. All experimental data will be displayed in the form of images. The method is presented in front of the other party, and all data is deleted after the experiment. As for Cher and others, they only need to see whether the instrument is running during this process to know whether the quantum probability in the black box has collapsed. This is the same as the double-slit interference experiment. As long as the process is not observed and only the output results are known, quantum probability will not collapse. After confirming that everything was ready, Shar solemnly pressed the button to activate the quantum instrument. Under everyone's anxious eyes, the instrument ran smoothly. Shar's expression was quite surprising, because according to previous expectations, a poor creature with a small brain like a koala would most likely fail the experiment.
Shar pondered for a while, then asked the artificial intelligence to replace the experimental creature in the black box with a chameleon to give it a try. The result once again exceeded his expectations, and the operation of the instrument did not stop. Shar's expression suddenly changed. They had previously tested turtles, which were also reptiles, and all of them failed the test. Why could chameleons do it? Are lizards smarter than turtles? Shar continued the experiment with great confusion, and then his expression became more and more astonished. The tuatara passed. The rattlesnake passed. The mantis passed. Even the spider passed the experiment successfully.
How is this possible?
Shar stared at the continuously running quantum detection instrument, doubting whether it was broken. He immediately closed the biological black box and let the AI conduct a self-test. Shi Nao's beep sounded soon. No abnormalities were found, and all programs are running normally.
Normal? Are you sure?
Shar frowned deeply.
Dr. Bo.
An assistant suddenly shouted with a trembling voice, pointing to a certain place. Shar subconsciously glanced up, and then felt a chill creeping into his heart from the soles of his feet. The quantum detection instrument is still running continuously, with no intention of stopping. But he clearly remembered that he had just closed the biological black box, which meant that there was no observer inside the black box at this moment. But the quantum probability was still in a state of collapse. Chapter 701: The Reversal of Cause and Effect. The Power of Fate. The entire laboratory suddenly fell into deathly silence, and hundreds of federal scientific researchers suddenly fell into panic. A few unwilling scholars ordered the brain to conduct a self-test again, and the result was still no abnormalities found. All the program operates normally.
Is it possible that some alien civilization is observing here?
A researcher looked around in horror and said stumblingly, excluding experimental accidents, there is only one possibility left: the collapse of quantum probability has nothing to do with the observation of arthropods, such as mantises and spiders. It is some kind of intelligent life form that they cannot see watching this experiment. Although the Federation has entered the starry sky for hundreds of years, due to the lack of breakthrough in warp engine technology, it is still spinning in the solar system without even seeing the shadow of an alien. Some arrogant federal researchers even believe that the Earth's ability to naturally evolve highly intelligent creatures, like humans, is a special case among special cases. Maybe they are the first civilizations to step into the stars. However, today, right here, in an ordinary quantum experiment, they actually discovered that alien civilizations seemed to be around them, and they didn't even notice it at all. Lin En was also looking around the quantum laboratory. Previously, in the Zero database, there were records of suspected interference by advanced alien civilizations in this experiment, so he has been paying close attention from the beginning. Throughout the whole experiment, I didn't notice anything wrong. Could it be that the other party's technological level has reached a point where it can block one's own perception? Or is it that the instruments for this alien civilization observation experiment exist outside the scope of backtracking? Thinking of this, Lin En tried to continue to expand the divine domain outwards. However, the artificial intelligence that had just started to control the experiment issued an extra fierce alarm. Warning. Quantum data interfered with. Warning. Energy supply limited. The artificial intelligence started to sound the alarm as soon as he made a move. And Lin couldn't help but think of a somewhat absurd possibility. Could this observer be me? But he has clearly tried that he cannot interfere with anything at all, and can only passively watch past information. Just like watching a movie or a video. Wait. Video? Lin paused for a moment, and then his thoughts suddenly exploded. The reason why the Federation wanted to create a quantum black box and asked the brain to delete all the data in the experiment was to prevent anyone from wanting to view it in the future. After all, for quantum-level particles, the barrier of space and time are meaningless. For example, in the delayed selected double-slit interference experiment, photons can always accurately determine whether their trajectory will be seen. Even if this observation is made after the photon has made its choice, it will be predicted in advance in violation of cause and effect. The time retrieval of the Destiny Priesthood is essentially an observation of past information. Lin had not thought of this before because the time span was too long. Who would have thought that observations made more than 1,000 years later could affect experimental results made more than 1,000 years ago? This discovery was an unexpected surprise for Lin. But for Shar and others living in the past, it was terrifying and terrifying. The alien civilization that was observing the quantum experiment was actually able to understand their language. And upon realizing that it had been discovered, it immediately launched some kind of attack beyond their cognition.
Immediately send all the experimental results to the terminal and tell them that an alien civilization has interfered with this experiment,
Shar said in horror.
Also, Activate the highest level of protection for me immediately.
Shar has no intention of finding the observer's location, and has no intention of fighting back. Because any alien civilization that has the ability to reach the Earth across the vast sea of stars must have a technological level that far exceeds that of the Federation. His only hope was to report the news and rely on the highest level of protection in the laboratory until federal professional negotiators arrived. Although Shar's response was not perfect, it was quick and decisive. However, a researcher suddenly interrupted with a loud voice.
Never open the guard. Make it stop. Stop it quickly.
Shar was stunned for a moment, and then suddenly thought that the protection system here also uses quantum technology, with a black box. It is absolutely safe, and will not cause any problems under normal circumstances. But it is different now. Unknown alien observers can even directly see the quantum-level reactions inside the black box. The moment Lin sensed something was wrong, he closed up the Divine Realm and stopped conducting quantum-level observations. Unfortunately, it was a step too late. The quantum probability collapsed in just an instant, and the activated protection system failed to search for the enemy. Under such circumstances, he took the initiative to start the attack. Powerful antimatter rays swept past amidst the horrified shouts of the crowd. More than a dozen researchers were killed on the spot. The walls of the laboratory were also directly cut open, and the energy system was also detonated at the same time. The terrifying annihilation wave began to expand rapidly, and soon swallowed up the entire laboratory. Lin subconsciously wanted to rescue him. After all, this disaster was caused by his own observations. There is no doubt that the rescue failed. All the atoms in the divine domain seemed to have been nailed to death. Even the divine power at the level of the Lord God could not shake it at all. The result was doomed from the beginning. Lin could only watch as hundreds of researchers in the laboratory were enveloped and decomposed by the expanding annihilation wave. At this moment, the past priest suddenly reacted. Under the violent shaking, space and time seemed to be separated by some kind of force. At that moment, Lin realized that part of his past divine power had been divided. It was the moment when his past self was killed by the annihilation wave. In just a few seconds, the entire laboratory was completely destroyed. Perhaps due to the impact of the past outbreak of priesthood, or the fact that the quantum probability in the entire area was frozen. The three researchers did not die completely, but were transformed into quantum ghosts. The body of the past self was completely torn and annihilated, but the soul was preserved intact under the protection of a trace of the main god-level divine power. And then it seemed to be drawn by some kind to a higher dimension space. Lin guessed that it was probably the attraction between magic that drove his past self to the eternal star. At this point in time, the moon goddess Diana should have discovered and descended into this universe. However, due to the distance, it took thousands of years to arrive. After figuring out the cause of the matter, Lin's face became a little weird. In a sense, he was the culprit behind the replacement of human civilization by silicon-based civilization. Because it was this quantum accident that caused the Federation's quantum technology to be destroyed. A substantial breakthrough. Of course, breakthroughs in quantum technology are just an introduction. What really leads to human beings' self-destruction is the unfair distribution of wealth and power. Real pain can only find solace in the virtual. Chapter 702 The End of a New Era. Chapter 702 The End, A New Era.
Quick! Activate the emergency mechanism. Call me 300 engineering machines. Evacuate all instruments that use quantum black boxes.
The huge explosion that occurred in the laboratory quickly attracted the attention of federal officials, especially the urgent report sent back by the doctor, which shocked the top federal officials and quickly mobilized the most elite forces. With the help of thousands of people and hundreds of construction vehicles, the ruined laboratory was cleared in just a few hours. Then thousands of people looked at the three people in the laboratory with a bright complexion, somewhere between reality and reality.
Quantum Ghost. This is the Quantum Ghost.
A doctor of quantum science shouted enthusiastically.
My theory is right. Did you see it? My theory is right. Quantum ghosts really exist.
Lin sighed as he watched the scene. He understood that according to history, the Federation would conduct detailed research on these three quantum ghosts and make major breakthroughs in the quantum field. Developing technology to upload consciousness to the virtual network. Bring the entire human civilization into the abyss. But without his past self as an anchor, Lin had no other way to interfere with all this and could only silently lift the divine realm. The ruined laboratory and thousands of federal personnel instantly turned into bubbles and disappeared in front of Lin, replaced by a huge production factory. Everything that just happened was like a dream. The experience of this trip to the past undoubtedly exceeded Lin's expectations, and gave him a new understanding of destiny. Lin En looked at the boundless void again. The universe was so vast that even with the power of the Lord God, it would be difficult to destroy an entire galaxy. However, there were countless such galaxies in the universe. No matter how strong you are, there will always be civilizations in the universe that are stronger than you. No matter how weak you are, there will always be entities in the universe that are weaker than you. Lin En couldn't help but think of this sentence, and he quickly adjusted his mentality. In fact, after absorbing the legacy of the Federation and the foundation of silicon-based civilization, the Magic Kingdom can be regarded as a true cosmic-level civilization. According to this, hundreds of thousands of kilometers away, the geometric civilization's main fleet has lost more than half under the siege of a steady stream of war machines. If there is no way to use artificial black holes to destroy the entire solar system, they will be beaten to death sooner or later. Just when Manager Mooney was considering whether to run away in advance, trillions of war weapons suddenly stopped in place, motionless. Naturally, the geometry fleet would not miss this rare opportunity. A round of Star Destroyer cannons immediately blasted out, destroying all the forerunners and mechanical guards blocking the road ahead.
Get out now!
Mountie slapped the command podium and gave the order, but the adjutant on the side interrupted at this moment.
Lord Mooney, they seem to have stopped?
Mooney also noticed something was wrong at this time, and immediately called up the image of the entire area. Sure enough, just as the adjutant said, all the war weapons suddenly stopped in place.
It seems that the governor has destroyed the core of the silicon-based civilization.
Minnie's heart suddenly relaxed, but he did not completely relax his vigilance. He still turned on the maximum energy supply and could supply it at any time. Prepare to run away. About an atomic hour later, Lin's figure appeared in the spacecraft out of thin air. The crew members were already used to it. Mooney immediately went up to him and asked about the situation. Lin En said a few words casually, ignoring the fact that he went back in time to investigate the cause of death. But there was nothing else to hide. Hearing that Lin single-handedly entered the base of the silicon-based civilization, destroyed it, and also obtained the core of the silicon-based civilization, Mooney was also speechless. Only then did he understand why the other party stopped them from destroying the entire galaxy with artificial black holes. When he thought of the horror of silicon-based civilization, Mooney wanted to persuade Lin En to destroy this dangerous thing. But then he shook his head. Compared with him, the power of silicon-based civilization is that for Magic Empire. For a cosmic-level civilization, it may be an existence that can be slapped to death with a flip of the palm. The core of preservation may be due to the obsession with collecting.
When you go back, ask your supreme leader to inform all the civilizations in the galaxy that the silicon-based civilization has been conquered by me, and ask them to send envoys to the home planet of the geometric civilization to discuss the future of the two galaxies.
Lin En gave instructions. In order to deal with the invasion of silicon-based civilization, hundreds of carbon-based civilizations in their galaxy united and formed a carbon-based alliance. Now that there is no such big threat as silicon-based civilization, if left unchecked, it will not take long. They broke up and entered a state of melee. So it was better to conquer them together. Although the Magic Kingdom is still empty now, when he refines the core into a godhead, he will have full confidence to control the entire silicon-based civilization.
I understand, Lord Governor.
Mooney nodded quickly. He could naturally tell that Lin En was planning to make some big move. The only good thing is that judging from the contact during this period, the Magic Empire is not the kind of civilization that is tyrannical and enslaves alien life. Instead, it can be called generous. Mooney has foreseen that a new era will come soon.